What's wrong? Xiling asked when she noticed the change in Gu Qijue's expression. Gu Qijue casually replied, "It seems something has happened." As soon as he finished speaking, the resource planet was immediately and completely sealed off by a massive barrier. This barrier was not a moonlight barrier, but an isolation barrier generated by 3 massive starships. It was unknown what had happened on this resource planet that caused the Qianqi star cluster to enforce a blockade on it. Gu Qijue and Xiling immediately stopped their exploration. Both of them rushed to Vita's vicinity at once. Bei Gongzhai and the others also quickly converged around Vita from their various locations. Bei Gongzhai asked nervously, "Your Excellency Vita, what happened?" Vita's answer to Bei Gongzhai's query was straightforward, "I don't know." After speaking, he continued, "If I'm not mistaken, something extremely valuable must have appeared on this resource planet. Otherwise, the Qianqi star cluster wouldn't have gone to such great lengths." Upon hearing this, the expressions of Bei Gongzhai and the others grew even uglier. One of them asked anxiously, "Your Excellency Vita, what should we do now?" Vita was able to answer this question. "Don't worry, when I was a god-rank warrior just like you, I encountered a similar situation. As long as your luck is good enough, 1 or 2 of you might still survive." After saying this, Vita specifically added, "I'm not joking, because I was the only one who survived under similar circumstances back then. The only experience I can pass on to you is to disperse and hide as much as possible. Gathering together makes the target too large." His words made Bei Gongzhai and many of the god rank feel as if they had fallen into an ice cave. With so many god rank experts, only 1 or 2 might survive in the end, or they might even be completely wiped out. This was certainly not the outcome they wanted. What they truly wanted was for everyone to survive. Compared to the panic-stricken crowd, Gu Qijue was extremely calm. He also asked a question that others wouldn't have considered. If nothing unexpected happens, there should be something very important on this resource planet that has fallen into the hands of our people. They might have blockaded the entire resource planet for a carpet search to find that item. If I'm not wrong, the Vermilion Bird Star Cluster must also care deeply about that item. Shouldn't we expect rescue? Vita had previously only thought Gu Qijue was decent, but now he couldn't help but regard him with higher esteem. Unfortunately, he could not disclose any relevant information regarding this question. This was a top-secret mission he had received just minutes ago. Gu Qijue's guess was largely correct. Vita did not reveal anything further. He looked at everyone, smiled and said, "I wish you good luck." After speaking, his figure vanished. Although Vita gave off an unreliable feeling, everyone decided to trust his words nonetheless. Everyone quickly broke up into small groups or individuals and went into hiding. Some acted alone, while others formed pairs. After a slight hesitation, Xiling chose to act alongside Gu Qijue. She felt that her chances of survival would be higher if she stayed with Gu Qijue. Xiling couldn't have known that this decision would save her life. Neither the Shenhuang continent nor Emperor Star could have imagined just how dangerous the battlefield of a star cluster-level civilization truly was. After 23, God-rank experts entered the star cluster-level civilization battlefield. Only 2 people ultimately returned alive. Of course, Gu Qijue and the others were simply unlucky. Under normal circumstances, they wouldn't have encountered such an event. However, anything can happen on a battlefield, so there was no need to be overly surprised by this situation. Even though Xiling was following Gu Qijue, she was still extremely nervous. She asked worriedly, "Where are we going now?" Gu Qijue casually replied, "First, we familiarize ourselves with the terrain." This idea of his was certainly very bold. At a time like this, the best solution should have been to find a place to hide, but he didn't plan to do that. Instead, he intended to explore this resource planet. Although Xiling felt she might have boarded a pirate ship, after pondering for a moment, she realized Gu Qijue's decision made some sense. The Qianqi Star Cluster's combat forces were going to conduct a carpet search of this area. If they hid in one place, they would likely be discovered no matter how well they concealed themselves. The best approach was to familiarize themselves with the terrain and then play hide-and-seek with the Qianqi Star Cluster's combat forces. It was clearly not without reason that Gu Qijue was able to become the head of Emperor Star and even sweep across the southeast continent sector in an extremely short period. He was resourceful and decisive, capable of formulating strategies and making judgments in a very short time. Even if he didn't possess earth-shattering power, he would undoubtedly be an important figure in the Emperor Star Alliance. What Xiling didn't know was that this ability of Gu Qijue's had been cultivated over time. Initially, he wouldn't have thought about so many things. While Gu Qijue and Xiling began exploring this boundless resource planet, large numbers of the Qianqi star cluster's combat forces entered the planet. Immediately upon entry, they began their carpet search. A god-rank expert from the Shenhuang continent had bad luck. Even though he was frantically fleeing deep underground, he was still discovered. A Qianqi star cluster warrior gave a cold laugh and said, "Use the depleted uranium earth-penetrating tracking missile." As soon as he finished speaking, warriors immediately began determining the coordinates of the Shenhuang continent god. The equipment for launching the depleted uranium earth-penetrating tracking missile was also quickly set up. This god was named Gu Qijue, a god skilled in manipulating the earth. Gu Qijue originally thought that he would be the safest person among everyone. He could continuously advance toward the planetary core. It should have been extremely difficult for the Qianqi star cluster's combat forces to find him. However, he didn't know that his luck was terrible this time. What the Qianqi star cluster was mainly searching for right now were exactly those who were hiding underground. Like him, 200, they even dare to steal from star cluster-level civilizations. The special cargo stolen from Qianqi star cluster was hidden underground. The so-called special cargo was actually a captive. It was a top talent captured by Qianqi star cluster when they attacked other star clusters. This person was a mechanic, and Qianqi star cluster wanted him to come to this resource planet to do something. Unexpectedly, some accidents happened, causing this top mechanic to fall into the hands of the Vermilion Bird Empire's combat troops. Of course, this matter might have been an accident, or it might have been a trap set by Qianqi star cluster. After all, many of the Vermilion Bird Empire's spies lurking in Qianqi star cluster were exposed because of this incident. At the same time, the Earth Executor God was still fleeing frantically. As he got further and further from the ground, he even felt that he was safe. Just as he was about to stop and rest, a terrifying bright light suddenly attacked him from behind. Boom! The depleted uranium armor-piercing tracking missile easily reached the location where the Earth Executor God was fleeing. After a earth-shattering explosion, it was as if a sun had appeared in the underground space. The Earth Executor God never dreamed that he would die such an unsightly death. Actually, he was wrong about one thing. He didn't even leave behind a god crystal core, so no one knew whether his death was good or bad. When the Earth Executor God died, Gu Qijue, Xiling, Bei Gongzhai, and the others all stopped. They had tactical wristbands and could see the survival status of their teammates. The number of team members in this area was originally 23, but now it had become 22. This meant that one of them had died. Gu Qijue and Xiling quickly knew who had died. Xiling said with some sadness, "Earth Executor is dead." Gu Qijue nodded, "Yes. So we must also hurry up and explore this resource planet. We need to find a way to leave here. If we really can't leave, we need to find a suitable hiding place. If worst comes to worst, we can only play hide-and-seek with Qianqi star cluster's combat troops here, utilizing the terrain advantage. If I'm not mistaken, the Vermilion Bird Empire's rescue team should already be on their way." Xiling knew that Gu Qijue was right, but she couldn't help but feel a little worried. Before the two of them could continue forward, the number of fallen team members changed from 1 to 2. While Gu Qijue and Xiling were talking, another person was actually eliminated. This sounded an alarm for both of them and all those who were still alive. Those who had previously hoped to hide everywhere and rely on their superb hiding skills to survive all began to move, just like Gu Qijue and Xiling. Gu Qijue and Xiling had been exploring everywhere from the beginning, and now they were naturally even more determined to follow their established strategy. While exploring this area, Gu Qijue was also thinking about a very important matter. What exactly was the treasure that 2-star cluster-level civilizations valued so highly? If it were Xiling or Bei Gongzhai and the others, they would be on the verge of death at this point, so how could they consider this? Gu Qijue was different. He wasn't just thinking about this problem. He was also preparing to find an opportunity to figure it out, and even planning a big score. Undoubtedly, the treasure that the 2-star cluster-level civilizations were fighting over was absolutely extraordinary. Since this item had immense value to star cluster-level civilizations, then the value of this treasure to the Emperor Star Alliance would certainly not be small, perhaps even immeasurably great. If such a treasure were brought to Emperor Star, it would definitely enable Emperor Star to develop and progress rapidly. Thinking of this, Gu Qijue prepared to take the initiative to attack Qianqi Star Cluster's combat troops. Since he was going to act against Qianqi Star Cluster's combat troops, he naturally couldn't bring Xiling with him. If he messed up alone, he could directly enter Blood Dragon God state and instantly break through. If he brought Zai Ling along for the ride, he might be fine. But Zai Ling would most likely perish in this place. Gu Qijue immediately took out a locator from his spatial device and handed it to Zai Ling. Next, we'll split up. If you encounter trouble, activate the locator. And I'll come to help. Zai Ling took the locator but shook her head and said, "You must be going to do something." Right? She wasn't sure if Gu Qijue was going to do something, but she felt that Gu Qijue seemed to be about to take some action. Gu Qijue didn't expect this woman to be so clever when she was smart. He hadn't said anything. Yet she still guessed it. He thought for a moment, then nodded. "I'm going to investigate and see what these two-star cluster-level civilizations are fighting over." Hearing this, Zai Ling was stunned. Was this something they could get involved in? She asked uncertainly, "Are you going to attack Qianqi Star Cluster's combat troops?" Gu Qijue nodded very decisively. "Yes." As he nodded, Zai Ling's head immediately felt twice its size. If it weren't for Gu Qijue's consistently reliable performance, she would have suspected that there was something wrong with him. Zai Ling advised, "Why are you going to investigate this? This has nothing to do with us." She stopped halfway through her sentence, because she had already thought of something very crazy, pulling teeth from a tiger's mouth. Gu Qijue wasn't just trying to stroke the tiger's whiskers, he was going to pull the rug out from under it, snatching food from the tiger's mouth. He was actually tempted by the item that the Vermilion Bird Empire and the Qianqi Empire, these two-star cluster-level civilizations, were fighting over. It wasn't that Gu Qijue couldn't be tempted by this item, but wasn't this a bit too thrilling? One must know that both Shenhuang Continent and Emperor Star were only quasi-galaxy-level civilizations. Star cluster-level civilizations ruled countless quasi-galaxy-level civilizations and galaxy-level civilizations. Yet Gu Qijue was audaciously going to snatch an opportunity from such a behemoth. If it were in the past, Zai Ling would not dare to do such a crazy thing. But after seeing Gu Qijue's mysterious confidence, Zai Ling couldn't help but feel a little excited, feeling that she could participate. Thinking of this, Zai Ling cautiously asked, "Can I join in?" Shenhuang Continent didn't have such a saying in the past, but Zai Ling had obviously read the information left by Lu Yuge and others and had learned to phrase things this way. Gu Qijue nodded and said, "If you're not afraid of danger, you can participate. Afterward, you'll receive benefits proportionate to your contributions." Gu Qijue didn't know what these two-star cluster-level civilizations were fighting over. However, for such matters, having an accomplice would definitely lead to a higher success rate than going solo. If absolutely necessary, he could give the treasure to Zai Ling, and he would lead the pursuers away. Or vice versa, after Gu Qijue finished speaking. Zai Ling nodded very decisively. The two of them didn't waste any time and quickly began their operation. 201, Chief Scientist of Tianyuan Star Cluster. On the resource planet, there were already quite a few Qianqi Star Cluster combat troops present from the start. As time passed, the number of these combat troops only increased. Moreover, these people began search missions in the form of 5-person squads. While one 5-person squad was carrying out a search mission, a black shadow suddenly appeared in front of them. The one who appeared before them was, naturally, Gu Qijue. Gu Qijue swept his thunder battle saber across fiercely, instantly killing 3 warriors from the Qianqi Star Cluster combat troops. The remaining 2 also had one killed easily by a purple transparent short sword held by Zai Ling. At this point, only one person remained, raising his hands in surrender. I surrender, please don't kill me." Lin Zhikong was terrified right now. This was his first time on a battlefield, and he hadn't expected it to be so horrifying. Just moments ago, he and his companions were laughing and talking, but the next moment, 4 of his teammates had turned into corpses. Gu Qijue hadn't expected such good luck. He randomly picked a squad to attack and actually ran into a coward. Gu Qijue didn't waste time on Lin Zhikong, asking directly, "What are you looking for?" Lin Zhikong was very aware of his role as a captive. "We are looking for a D-rank cosmic-level mechanic." Hearing this answer, Gu Qijue gasped in surprise. A D-rank cosmic-level mechanic's value was probably no lower than the head of the Vermilion Bird Empire. But he was confused again. How could such an important person easily appear on the battlefield? In any case, Lin Zhikong was extremely cooperative, so if he encountered anything he didn't understand, he could just ask this guy. "Why is this mechanic here?" As expected, Lin Zhikong answered every question. Although Gu Qijue really needed such a captive, if someone from the Emperor Star Alliance dared to act like this, he would definitely twist their head off. It is said that this was the mechanic's meticulous escape plan. We managed, with great difficulty, to intercept him on this resource planet. Of course. Your Vermilion Bird Empire's agents should have already linked up with him. Gu Qijue did not answer Lin Zhikang's question but continued to ask, "Do you have any information on that mechanic?" This time, Lin Zhikang looked troubled. "Yes, but I can't transfer it to you. Otherwise, the Qianqi Empire can trace the resource transfer records afterward. You can use their mobile smart device to look." Lin Zhikang, quite shamelessly, pointed to his companions on the ground and spoke. Gu Qijue didn't stand on ceremony. He directly took a smart bracelet off one person's wrist. This was the so-called smart device. The smart devices of the Vermilion Bird Empire and the Qianqi Empire operated similarly, and he quickly figured it out. Opening the smart device, he looked with a slight astonishment at the virtual light projection that appeared before him. Gu Qijue spoke uncertainly. The D-rank cosmic level mechanic is a child. What he saw was an 11 or 12-year-old white-haired youth. Lin Zhikang shook his head. Not a child. He is a member of the celestial race. 1,000 years for the celestial race is equivalent to 1 human year in terms of physical change. Although this member of the celestial race looks young, he is actually an old monster over 13,000 years old. After Lin Zhikang explained, Gu Qijue understood. After nodding slightly, he said, "Give me a reason not to kill you." Gu Qijue truly didn't want to kill such a useful captive as Lin Zhikang. Lin Zhikang, however, was scared half to death by Gu Qijue's words. Even though he was a demigod, he was terrified of death. If it weren't for the threat of immediate execution for refusing to go to the battlefield, he would never have gone. Lin Zhikang had a very strong will to survive. After a brief thought, he said, "I can provide you with intelligence regarding the Qianqi Star Cluster combat troops I belong to." After hearing this, Gu Qijue pondered for a moment and still chose not to kill Lin Zhikang immediately. A captive this spineless was definitely rare. If he killed Lin Zhikang now, he definitely wouldn't find such a cooperative captive next time. Gu Qijue immediately put away his thunder battle saber. Then, he prepared to take Zai Ling and go look for the celestial race mechanic named Tian Li. He had already checked Tian Li's detailed information. The individual turned out to be the chief scientist of a star cluster-level civilization named the Tianyuan Star Cluster. When the Tianyuan Star Cluster was fighting 3 other star cluster-level civilizations, they were sneak-attacked by the Qianqi Star Cluster. Most of the high-ranking officials of the Tianyuan Star Cluster were taken away by the Qianqi Star Cluster. Even Tian Li, the chief scientist of the Tianyuan Star Cluster, was captured. Gu Qijue felt he had a chance to invite Tian Li to visit the Emperor Star. Whether Tian Li was in the Qianqi Star Cluster or the Vermilion Bird Star Cluster, he would only be a gilded cage canary. However, if Tian Li went to the Emperor Star Alliance, it would be different. Once Tian Li arrived at the Emperor Star, he could become an ally of the Emperor Star. The biggest problem right now, however, was that no one knew exactly where Tian Li was. Buzz, in a stretch of mountain forest, a white-haired youth used powerful mental energy to wipe out an entire group of Qianqi Star Cluster combat troops. The white-haired youth was shaking all over. He was severely injured, and his mental energy was rapidly depleting. He was Tian Li, the chief scientist and chief mechanic of the Tianyuan Star Cluster civilization. The Tianyuan Star Cluster paid a heavy price for its arrogance. If the head and other high-ranking officials had been willing to advance their conquest step by step, instead of fighting on 2 fronts, or even 3 fronts, the Tianyuan Star Cluster civilization would not have suffered such heavy losses, but talking about that now was meaningless. He had to escape for the Tianyuan Star Cluster civilization to have hope. But he didn't have a single decent machine on him, nor did he have the conditions to manufacture one. His only means of self-preservation was his powerful mental energy. Unfortunately, he had already expended a large amount of mental energy just to escape, and now his mental energy was about to be completely exhausted. Tian Li moved through the mountain forest for a while, and the stealth barrier on his body gradually began to fail. This stealth barrier was something he had rushed to complete temporarily, and it was clearly reaching its limit. Just as the stealth barrier completely vanished, Tian Li saw 4 corpses and 1, severely wounded Qianqi Star Cluster warrior. Lin Zhikang never dreamed that such immense fortune would arrive just like that. He had originally inflicted some injuries on himself that looked serious but were actually non-fatal. When he saw Tian Li, this big fish, appear before him, Lin Zhikang naturally stopped pretending immediately. He immediately got up and sent out a distress signal. Gu Qijue and Zai Ling, who were closest to him, received his distress signal. At the same time, after sending the distress signal, Lin Zhikang regretted it. He forgot one very important thing. Gu Qijue and Zai Ling were also carrying their mobile smart devices. Sure enough. While Lin Zhikang and Tian Li were in a tense standoff, Gu Qijue, who had left shortly before, returned. Preparing to silence him, he originally thought Lin Zhikang had sold him and Zai Ling out. Only upon returning did he realize that Lin Zhikang had delivered a massive surprise. 202, the third option, partner with me. Buzz, a ball of blood-red demonic power condensed in Gu Qijue's palm. The next moment, he struck this ball of demonic power into Lin Zhikang's body. As Lin Zhikang was terrified, Gu Qijue spoke. This ball of demonic power is extremely pure. If I die on this planet, this demonic power will directly detonate, blowing you to smithereens. You can check to see if this demonic power is as dangerous as I say. Lin Zhikang was almost scared senseless. He followed Gu Qijue's words and inspected the ball of demonic power. That ball of demonic power was incredibly pure and terrifying. Once it exploded in his body, he would undoubtedly be blown to smithereens. Lin Zhikang could only speak tremblingly. Please spare my life, I haven't betrayed you. Gu Qijue nodded. I don't plan to kill you, you are not at fault, in fact. You have rendered meritorious service. So, if I leave this planet alive, this demonic power will transform into pure energy, which you can absorb and refine, helping you advance further. Therefore, from now on, I hope you will do your best to help me for the sake of your own life. Upon hearing this, Lin Zhikang nodded frantically. Being a traitor was shameful, and he knew he was shameful. But no matter what, he had to live. If he hadn't been forced to come to the battlefield to avoid execution, he wouldn't have come to this battlefield. Not cooperating now meant a dead end. To survive, he naturally had to cooperate. If those people hadn't forced him to the battlefield, wouldn't none of this have happened? Seeing Lin Zhikang's sensible reaction, Gu Qijue didn't press him further. Instead, he looked at Tian Li, who was on his last legs. Your Excellency Tian Li, it's very dangerous here. Shall we find a safe place to talk? Tian Li agreed to Gu Qijue's invitation. Because Gu Qijue was right, it was indeed very dangerous here. Not a good place. But before leaving, Tian Li still glanced at Lin Zhikang and said, why not kill him? In Tian Li's view, Lin Zhikang was an enemy, and killing him would put an end to everything. Gu Qijue, however, said, know yourself and your enemy, and you will win 100 battles. With him, we can obtain some intelligence on the Qianqi Star Cluster's combat forces. He is more useful alive than dead. Tian Li nodded this time. Gu Qijue was right. Without an insider, it would be difficult for them to break through. The three quickly left the area. After arriving at a relatively safe zone, Tian Li asked, who are you from the Vermilion Bird Star Cluster? What does the Vermilion Bird Star Cluster plan to do with me? Gu Qijue's answer certainly surprised Tian Li greatly, because he said, I am indeed a member of the Vermilion Bird Star Cluster, but your Excellency is from the Tianyuan Star Cluster, and there seems to be no connection with the Vermilion Bird Star Cluster. Tian Li was confused by Gu Qijue. What do you mean? He and the Vermilion Bird Star Cluster naturally had no connection. The Vermilion Bird Star Cluster and the Tianyuan Star Cluster were neither allies nor enemies. They were strangers with no relationship whatsoever. Gu Qijue smiled. Your Excellency Tian Li, would you consider cooperating with me? I'll briefly explain my situation to Your Excellency Tian Li. Tian Li quickly learned from Gu Qijue about a quasi-galaxy-level force behind the Great Rift Zone in the borderlands of the Vermilion Bird Star Cluster. If Tian Li were to defect from Tianyuan civilization to another civilization, he would never consider Emperor Star under any circumstances. However, now, a quasi-galaxy-level civilization like Emperor Star might very well be a better choice for him. The reason was simple. After entering a star cluster-level civilization like the Vermilion Bird Empire, he would definitely be controlled, nor would the Vermilion Bird Empire help him rebuild Tianyuan civilization. To the Vermilion Bird Empire, he had value, but rebuilding Tianyuan civilization had no value whatsoever. Emperor Star was different. Emperor Star was only a quasi-galaxy-level civilization. Moreover, Emperor Star was a member of the Vermilion Bird Star Cluster, and its cooperation with him would benefit both sides. He could use all the star cluster-level technology he possessed to help Emperor Star develop rapidly. Gu Qijue, on the other hand, could help him take in some refugees from the Tianyuan Star Cluster-level civilization. The place where Gu Qijue was located was behind a great rift zone in the universe, a very safe area. Furthermore, if anything were to happen during his transfer to Emperor Star would be sanctioned by the Vermilion Bird Empire, but he himself would be fine. For someone like him, no matter which force he fell into, he only had value if he was alive. Tian Li thoroughly understood all these issues in a very short time. After fully understanding all the issues, Tian Li said, "I am willing to cooperate with Emperor Star. However, I now need some materials and advanced energy stones, and preferably a simple manufacturing workshop to create some escape tools." Gu Qijue thought for a moment, then transferred most of the materials from his spatial device to another spatial device and handed it to Tian Li. Tian Li didn't expect Gu Qijue to be so straightforward. He immediately revealed his last trump card. It was a subspace manufacturing workshop, but there were no materials inside. The reason for this was that this technology had just been researched when the Tianyuan civilization was destroyed. Not only that, but this device was also just a semi-finished product. Only certain special substances could exist long-term in the subspace manufacturing workshop. Other living beings and various other materials could not be preserved long-term in this subspace. Gu Qijue and Zai Ling only saw a transparent light door appear before them. After the transparent light door appeared, Tian Li entered it and waved to the two of them. Gu Qijue and Zai Ling cautiously entered. There was actually no danger inside. As long as they didn't stay for more than an hour, there would be no problem. After the two entered, Tian Li waved his hand, and the light door to the outside completely disappeared. At this point, no matter how the people outside searched, they would not be able to find them. The only pity was that this subspace device was incomplete, and they couldn't hide inside for long. After Gu Qijue and Zai Ling entered this subspace manufacturing workshop, Tian Li told them everything about it. As an ally, he was also quite sincere. Moreover, in such a dangerous situation, both sides had to cooperate wholeheartedly to find a way out. After listening to Tian Li, Gu Qijue and Zai Ling both felt a bit regretful. Otherwise, with this device, they would be able to successfully pass this trial. Tian Li pondered for a moment, then looked at Zai Ling and said, "Can you provide me with some materials?" Gu Qijue had already provided him with many materials, but it was still not enough. Zai Ling didn't agree directly, but instead looked at Gu Qijue. Gu Qijue asked Tian Li, "What kind of escape device do you want to manufacture?" He didn't trust Tian Li enough yet and needed to ask clearly. 203, cutting-edge technology, subspace manufacturing workshop. Tian Li seriously said, "I need to manufacture several miniature wormhole generators, as well as single-person flying vehicles, several stealth devices, and several weapons." He knew that since both parties had just established cooperation, the most important thing he should do now was be sincere. He was not speaking carelessly. These were exactly the things he intended to produce using the subspace manufacturing workshop. After Tian Li finished speaking, Gu Qijue said to Zai Ling, "Give him all the materials you don't need. After he arrives at Emperor Star, we can form a tripartite alliance." Zai Ling thought for a moment and finally nodded. This matter was not as simple as just a few materials, it was a pledge of allegiance. Lord Gu Qijue had done such a massive thing behind the back of the Vermilion Bird Empire. It was impossible for Tian Li to betray himself, and Gu Qijue would not betray himself either. As an outsider, it was clearly impossible for her not to participate in this matter because she knew far too much. Now she had also provided materials to Tian Li, and later she would become a member of the tripartite alliance. If she leaked the news, she would essentially be crossing herself. Zai Ling understood this calculation clearly. Tian Li asking Zai Ling for materials was actually a way to bring her onto the pirate ship. What they were about to do was seek a way to survive in the cracks between two star cluster-level civilizations. For such a major undertaking, being careless was definitely not an option. Next, Gu Qijue and Zai Ling watched as Tian Li used the manufacturing workshop within the subspace to produce various technological devices. There were miniature wormhole generators, strong shielding stealth devices, a miniature starship, and a set of nanite mecha. These items were clearly the weapons Tian Li manufactured for himself. Gu Qijue asked with great interest, "Your Excellency Tian Li, did you design and build this manufacturing workshop in the subspace?" Tian Li nodded. "Yes. To show sincerity, once we reach your territory, I can build a subspace manufacturing workshop for each of you. However, this is only the first-generation prototype, which is very old. I have already completed the theory and design for the 7th-generation subspace manufacturing workshop. As our cooperation deepens, I will update and upgrade them for both of you, and provide more technological devices." Tian Li did not want to fall into the hands of any star cluster-level civilization. Gu Qijue and Zai Ling were his best partners for cooperation. He chose to bet on both Gu Qijue and Zai Ling simultaneously because, In his view, Xiling was easier to control. Gu Qijue was a reckless fellow, while Xiling was clearly brought onto the pirate ship by Gu Qijue. Although Xiling lacked Gu Qijue's insightful foresight, she was still a very intelligent woman. She opened her mouth, smiling brightly. "Your Excellency Tian Li, you said one thing incorrectly. Lord Gu Qijue and I are on the same side. You can place all your subspace manufacturing workshops on Lord Gu Qijue's territory." She did not want to be used by Tian Li, nor did she want Tian Li to sow discord between her and Gu Qijue. Gu Qijue naturally saw through Tian Li's intentions, but he didn't say anything. He trusted Xiling's wisdom. It was impossible for her not to understand these matters. Xiling's words, coupled with Gu Qijue's half-smile, indeed made Tian Li very embarrassed. He could only pretend that nothing had happened and continue working. Before long, all the various weapons and devices he needed to produce were completed. The group of three quickly left the subspace manufacturing workshop. When Gu Qijue arrived outside, he asked a question that Tian Li hadn't mentioned earlier. "How long will it take before we can enter the subspace manufacturing workshop again?" Tian Li had only mentioned that the duration inside could not exceed 1 hour. He had not specified whether they could re-enter for refuge after coming out. If they could go back in after exiting, they would essentially be safe, but clearly things weren't that easy. Tian Li casually said, "The subspace manufacturing workshop needs to cool down for the same duration it was running. We stayed inside for 47 minutes just now, meaning we can only re-enter after 47 minutes have passed." Gu Qijue nodded upon hearing this. Then he continued to ask, "Your Excellency Tian Li, why are you still using the 1st generation prototype when you already have the design for the 7th generation?" This time, Tian Li gave a wry smile, because the 2nd through 6th generations all had varying issues and were unstable. Although the 1st generation has a time limit, it is extremely stable. Gu Qijue had no more questions this time. Entering subspace was a rather dangerous endeavor. Although they usually pass through subspace when tearing space, they do not stay there for too long. The rules of time and space in subspace are relatively chaotic, and staying in subspace for too long can easily lead to accidents. Tian Li followed behind Gu Qijue and Xiling for a while, then asked, "How do you plan to escape?" This question was difficult to answer. Xiling did not speak but looked toward Gu Qijue. Of course, Gu Qijue also didn't know how they could escape. Not only him, but even Vita, a universe-level expert, and Tian Li, the chief scientist of a star cluster-level civilization, didn't know the answer to this. But Gu Qijue still provided an answer. "We will first scout the terrain, and then wait for intelligence from Lin Zhikang's side. If we encounter extremely dangerous situations, we will enter the subspace manufacturing workshop to hide." According to the information we gathered previously, the Vermilion Bird Star Cluster's combat unit will attack this resource planet. When the Vermilion Bird Star Cluster's combat unit initiates the attack, we can find an opportunity to escape. Gu Qijue's plan was flawless. The Vermilion Bird Star Cluster was also extremely interested in Tian Li, the chief scientist of the Tianyuan Star Cluster. At this moment, the Vermilion Bird Star Cluster's combat unit was rapidly assembling. An ordinary person can make a knife, a mechanical engineer can make a gun, but a top talent can design and manufacture nuclear weapons. The value of a chief scientist from a star cluster-level civilization like Tian Li is immeasurable. It is no exaggeration to say that the Tianyuan star cluster civilization can exist without a head of state, but not without Tian Li. Gu Qijue and Xiling had not yet completely explored this resource planet when the great battle outside the planet erupted. Because the trio of Gu Qijue, Xiling, and Tian Li were constantly on the move, they were not captured. But the others who chose to hide in various ways had now become dead men, including Bai Gongzhai. All other God-rank experts were found under the Qianqi star cluster's carpet search. Although they could also tear space to escape, the Qianqi star cluster's blockade of this planet was comprehensive. 204, they escaped, the only 2 survivors. The subspace connecting the planet to the outside was completely locked down, making it impossible for Bai Gongzhai and the others to tear through space and leave. Although they could tear through space, they couldn't stay in subspace for too long. Due to many reasons, they were doomed. Gu Qijue and his 2 companions, however, were relatively lucky, coupled with correct strategy and formidable strength. Not only were they not discovered by the main forces of the Qianqi star cluster, but even if they had been, they had contingency plans. Therefore, they relatively easily held on until the Vermilion Bird Star Cluster's combat forces began fighting the Qianqi Star Cluster's combat forces. seeing cracks continuously appear in the planetary blockade barrier. Gu Qijue smiled. Tianli also smiled because their hope had arrived. Tianli hastily asked, "How do I get to the Emperor Star Alliance next?" Gu Qijue retorted, "Can you go to the Emperor Star Alliance alone? If they brought Tianli with them, it would be very dangerous. He and Zai Ling would inevitably have to go through extensive screening. Although Tianli had a subspace manufacturing workshop, that device required an hour of cooldown after an hour of use. Relying solely on that device, Tianli likely wouldn't be able to pass the screening. After leaving Gu Qijue and Zai Ling, Tianli gained his freedom. However, he was a non-combatant and not a universe survival expert, so his survival ability in the universe was not strong. Tianli thought for a moment and said, "I can wait for you at a predetermined location, until I can't go to the Emperor Star Alliance alone. I don't have strong combat capabilities, and if I encounter a super god rank warrior, I might die." Gu Qijue immediately said, "All right, then you choose a place, and we'll meet up with you after we pass the screening." Tianli shook his head, "You don't need to rush to meet me, but rather find a place that uses an ultra-long-distance spatial teleportation device. If we can't use an ultra-long-distance spatial teleportation device, we might need tens of thousands of wormhole jumps to enter the Shenhuang continent." Gu Qijue understood that Tianli was right. They not only had to find a place that used an ultra-long-distance spatial teleportation device, but also arrange a fake identity for Tianli that could use the spatial teleportation device. After pondering for a while, he said to Tianli, "I understand. You choose a predetermined location. Once we find a suitable place, we'll arrange a legal identity for you, then come find you." Tianli showed a satisfied expression. This was the benefit of working with smart people. No need to explain every detail. Life is limited. If even common knowledge questions had to be explained in detail, precious life would quickly be exhausted. Next, Gu Qijue took Tianli and Zai Ling towards the direction they had come from. Here, Gu Qijue did not see anyone else. He not only didn't see Bai Gongzhai and the others, he didn't even see Vita. However, Gu Qijue did not stop. He directly led Zai Ling and Tianli to continue forward. The planetary blockade barrier in this direction had already been shattered by the planet-destroying cannons. As long as their luck wasn't too bad, they could all successfully escape from here. It turned out their luck was very good. The three arrived here very smoothly. After Tianli gave Gu Qijue a set of coordinates, they split up. Gu Qijue and Zai Ling had to report to the Vermilion Bird Star Cluster's frontline headquarters, otherwise they would become missing persons. If the two appeared elsewhere later, they would become deserters. Once they became deserters from the Vermilion Bird Star Cluster's combat forces, the matter would be extremely serious. At best, life imprisonment and forced labor; at worst, immediate execution. These rules could be clearly seen on the nano-combat wristband. Gu Qijue and Zai Ling flew in the Void Realm for a period of time, returning to the rear base. As soon as they appeared here, they saw someone who looked very much like Vita. This person was named Pastor, an E-rank universe warrior. Pastor was Vita's elder brother, and he had come precisely to wait for Gu Qijue and Zai Ling. Pastor looked at Gu Qijue and Zai Ling, forcing a smile, and said, "Welcome back, newcomers." Then he added, "From now on, perhaps I shouldn't call you newcomers. You have already been baptized by the battlefield and transformed into warriors. Let me introduce myself. I am Pastor. Vita and I look very alike because I am Vita's elder brother. I have some very unfortunate news for you. My foolish younger brother and all 21 of your team members have sacrificed themselves." Zai Ling, being by Gu Qijue's side, hadn't felt the cruelty of war. Only now did she realize that it wasn't that this war wasn't cruel enough, but that Gu Qijue had kept the three of them safe at all times. It was also at this moment that Gu Qijue learned that Bai Gongzhai and all 21 other god-rank warriors had died in battle. He was now somewhat heartbroken and grief-stricken. 21 god-rank warriors. That's more than 20 god crystal cores. How many deities could have been created? Compared to Gu Qijue's heartache, Zai Ling felt more sadness. Her relationship with Bai Gongzhai and the others was neither good nor bad, but they had known each other for a long time after all. She had originally thought that this time, all of them would be able to return to the Shenhuang continent safely. In the end, 23 people came, and only she and Gu Qijue were able to return to the Shenhuang continent safely. Pastor continued to speak to the two. "Now you need to go to the frontline headquarters to report the situation. Follow me." Although Pastor didn't believe that Gu Qijue and Zai Ling had hidden Tianli, however, according to regulations, all those who escaped needed to undergo inspection. Gu Qijue and Zai Ling followed behind Pasteur and quickly headed to the Vermilion Bird Star Cluster's frontline headquarters. Bifeng Star. Vermilion Bird Star Cluster frontline headquarters. It was Gu Qijue and his companions' first time here. Everything here was new to them. Many devices and technological weapons, let alone Zai Ling. Even Gu Qijue had never seen before. Zai Ling really wanted to say at this moment that Gu Qijue's previous decision was very correct, because from the moment they entered Bifeng Star, they had been constantly checked by various devices. There were even universe-rank powerhouses following behind them. If they had brought Tian Li with them in any way, they would definitely have been discovered. At this moment, however, the two easily passed all the inspections. After the two completed all inspections, they met Pasteur again. Pasteur smiled at the universe-rank powerhouse following behind the two. Monroe, I told you long ago. They are just God-rank warriors. There's no need for them to come to the frontline headquarters for inspection. The man named Monroe ignored Pasteur and turned to leave. He still had others to inspect. Tian Li might have some spatial device on him that could hide himself. Their massive operation this time was to snatch Tian Li from the Qianqi star cluster. They were not prepared to return empty-handed. After Monroe left, Gu Qijue asked Pasteur, must we teleport back to our original location, or can we tour the Vermilion Bird Star Cluster for a while? 205, Alpha Star. Black Market Underground Shop Bast did not know why Gu Qijue and Zai Ling wanted to visit the Vermilion Bird Empire at a time like this. However, he still answered Gu Qijue's question according to the regulations. You are currently still probationary warriors. You only need to complete 3 trial missions as required by the Empire. At all other times, you are free, whether you wish to return to your original location or stay and visit the Vermilion Bird Empire is up to you. After Bast finished speaking, Gu Qijue immediately thanked him. Thank you for the information. After learning that they were free to move around, Gu Qijue decided to take Zai Ling to Alpha Star. When he used his nano-combat wristband to search for information, he discovered that this planet might allow them to bring Tian Li back to the Shenhuang continent. Alpha Star is a commercial planet. It hosts various conventional commercial activities, as well as some gray industries. Gu Qijue took Zai Ling, spending several days to finally arrive at this location. Alpha Star. Sirius District. This is the most chaotic area on Alpha Star. This place has almost no order. As long as one possesses sufficient strength, they can do whatever they want here. Therefore, those entrenched in the Sirius District are generally not good people. Gu Qijue brought Zai Ling to the Sirius District not to display martial power. Rather, it was because this place could get Tian Li a fake identity, and also obtain tickets to board the ultra-long-distance spatial transmission device. If Gu Qijue and Zai Ling were a bit stronger, the Vermilion Bird Empire might have sent people to monitor them. As for now, the two of them were completely free. Zai Ling followed behind Gu Qijue, looking around with great curiosity. As she walked, she casually asked, are the buildings on the Emperor Star also in this style? Zai Ling noticed that Gu Qijue seemed accustomed to everything on Alpha Star. She couldn't help but wonder if the Emperor Star, where Gu Qijue and the others lived, was also like this. Gu Qijue thought for a moment and said, Emperor Star is a civilization where technological and cultivation civilizations coexist, not a purely technological civilization. However, Emperor Star certainly has many skyscrapers like these around us, as well as flying vehicles operating at low and high altitudes. Zai Ling nodded, then asked, where are we going next? Gu Qijue casually replied, we're going to arrange a legitimate identity for our friend. The friend he spoke of was, naturally, Tian Li from the Tianyuan star cluster. While Gu Qijue and Zai Ling were still talking, a green monster appeared in front of them. Zai Ling frowned and asked, what kind of monster is this? Gu Qijue displayed the data page of his combat wristband in front of Zai Ling and said, this is a goblin, one of the races in the Vermilion Bird Star Cluster. After this goblin appeared, he introduced himself, Sirs, my name is Dashan. Although his name was Dashan Big Mountain, his figure was very short. It would have been more appropriate if he had named himself AI Dajan. Gu Qijue glanced at Dashan the goblin, then asked, is there something you need? Hearing this, Dashan laughed heartily and said, I am a tour guide for the Sirius District. Whatever the two of you want to do here, I can take you to the right place. Gu Qijue was amused by this. I want 10 functional fake identities, to be used for disguises when carrying out missions. Can you handle this? Dashan heard this and patted his chest, guaranteeing, of course I can, you don't need to look for anyone else, our clan chief specializes in this. The two of you, follow me. Gu Qijue did not hesitate and casually followed behind Dashin. He wasn't worried about the goblin trying any tricks. His and Zai Ling's strength made them virtually invincible on Alpha Star. Dashin also dared not play tricks on Gu Qijue and Zai Ling. Goblins survive on Alpha Star by seeking niches in the cracks. After Gu Qijue and Zai Ling followed Dashin through many twists and turns for a long time, they arrived at the underground city of the Sirius district. This was a dim district built underground, inhabited by large numbers of gray-skinned and green-skinned goblins. The goblins kept the place very clean, and goblins were selling various low-value items everywhere. There were also many serpent folk sculptures here, and Dashin devoutly bowed every time he passed one. Gu Qijue glanced at the serpent folk sculpture and immediately asked, "Who is this?" Dashin respectfully replied, "This is Lord Anuma, a super god rank expert and the guardian deity of our goblins." Gu Qijue nodded. This serpent folk was clearly the goblin boss. The reason these goblins could survive here was due to this serpent folk's protection. Just then, Dashin said, "We've arrived. The clan chief is inside. Come in with me." Gu Qijue nodded slightly, looking very relaxed, while Zai Ling stood ready, preparing to deal with any sudden situations. It turned out that these goblins, including the goblin clan chief, dared not pull any tricks. There was no danger in the room. Only the identity of the goblin clan chief surprised Gu Qijue somewhat, because the goblin clan chief was not a goblin, but a silver-haired cat girl. Gu Qijue curiously asked, "You are the goblin clan chief?" Awei picked up her coffee, took a sip, and nodded nonchalantly. Then she said, "What business do you need to conduct?" Gu Qijue said, "I need 10 fake identities that can use the ultra-long-distance spatial transmission device." Awei held up a finger and said, 100,000 Chester. Chester is one of the universal currencies, usable in the Vermilion Bird Star Cluster, Qianqi Star Cluster, and many other star clusters. This is because it is the universal currency issued by the Chester Empire, a super-star cluster-level civilization. The Vermilion Bird Star Cluster, Qianqi Star Cluster, Tianyuan Star Cluster, and other star clusters all belong to the Chester Super Star Cluster. Of course, Gu Qijue and Zai Ling did not possess the universal currency known as Chester. So Gu Qijue took out an infinite crystal stone and placed it in front of Awei. When Awei saw the infinite crystal stone, she was initially uninterested, but after discovering the pure energy contained within, her eyes lit up. "What is this?" Awei was extremely curious about what this thing was. She knew it was a type of energy stones, but it was the first time she had seen this kind. Gu Qijue laughed. "This is the most common infinite crystal stone. Give me a quote." Originally, infinite crystal stones had no classification, but with Gu Qijue's increase in strength and the addition of advanced materials in his possession, he can now use the infinite engine to create ordinary, intermediate, advanced, and special-grade infinite crystal stones. Awei held the infinite crystal stone in her hand, sensed it carefully for a long time, and then quoted a relatively fair price. 100 Chester. "How about it?" Gu Qijue nodded. "Deal." As he spoke, he took out a spatial storage device and handed it over. Inside, there were exactly 1,000 ordinary infinite crystal stones. 206, successfully intercepted. Returning to the Divine Wilderness continent, Elvi inspected the infinite crystal stone Gu Qijue handed over. After confirming there were no issues, she took out 10 identity crystal cards. Gu Qijue originally thought this matter would be very difficult. He never expected that getting a fake identity in the Vermilion Bird Star Cluster would be so easy. However, after quickly reviewing the identity crystal cards, Gu Qijue understood why obtaining them was so simple. These identity crystal cards belonged to small-time individuals with ordinary strength. Some of these people might still be alive, while others might have died, but their identity information was never cancelled. In fact, Gu Qijue's guess was generally correct. It was just that there were no survivors among these people. They had all died due to various accidents. Gu Qijue actually didn't need 10 identity cards, one would have been enough. But to be safe, he bought a few more. They were cheap anyway, and he might need them in the future. After getting the identity crystal cards, Gu Qijue asked Elvi, "Can I buy tickets here for the ultra-long-distance spatial teleportation device?" Elvi nodded. "The Goblin shop in the Sirius district can provide most of the items you need. Such a ticket costs 160,000 Chester each. How many do you want?" Gu Qijue hadn't expected the tickets on the black market to be so expensive. Normal tickets typically cost 100,000 Chester each, so black market tickets were 160% of the original price. Gu Qijue thought for a moment and said, "I need 3 tickets." This stuff was too expensive. Although he could produce infinite crystal stones using the infinite engine and other advanced materials, there was no need to waste them. He took out a simple spatial storage device and placed enough infinite crystal stones inside. After Elvi verified it, she gave him 3 tickets. Afterward, Elvi also handed Gu Qijue a merchandise crystal card. This crystal card contains all the services and goods offered by the Goblin Shop. Gu Qijue took the crystal card, nodded, and then left with Zai Ling. At the same time, the high-ranking officials of the Vermilion Bird Star Cluster and the Qianqi Star Cluster held a video negotiation. There was only one issue for the two sides to discuss. The Qianqi Star Cluster believed that the Vermilion Bird Star Cluster had abducted Tian Li, the chief scientist of the Tianyuan Star Cluster civilization. The Vermilion Bird Star Cluster, on the other hand, believed that the Qianqi Star Cluster was crying, "thief," while being the thief, and demanded them to unconditionally release Tian Li, whom they had imprisoned. The Vermilion Bird Star Cluster's stance was very effective. Many refugees from the Tianyuan Star Cluster flocked to the Vermilion Bird Star Cluster. Most of these refugees were ordinary people. Providing them with food and living environments was enough. A small portion, however, were talents, even top-tier talents. These individuals were of immense value to the Vermilion Bird Star Cluster. Exchanging some food and a place to live for talent was a worthwhile trade. The Vermilion Bird Star Cluster naturally understood this calculation. Both sides argued fiercely, each sticking to their own claims. Moreover, both sides publicly released a large amount of evidence, indicating that Tian Li was not in their possession. For a time, Tian Li's whereabouts became a hot topic. The knowledge Tian Li possessed, along with his unparalleled wisdom and creativity, given enough time, could potentially build a quasi-star cluster-level civilization. Therefore, the Vermilion Bird Star Cluster, the Qianqi Star Cluster, and many surrounding star cluster-level civilizations were all searching for Tian Li. Of course, no one would have imagined that the leader of a quasi-galaxy-level civilization would be so audacious as to pull the rug out from under them and snatch food from the tiger's mouth. While everyone was still busy searching for Tian Li's whereabouts, Gu Qijue and Zai Ling had already rendezvoused with Tian Li. Immediately upon their reunion, Gu Qijue used his powerful demonic power to disguise Tian Li, making him almost identical to the Boar Man on the identity crystal card. Tian Li, of course, didn't care about looking like a Boar Man. He just wanted to safely enter Gu Qijue's territory and begin their grand plan. After Gu Qijue and Tian Li met, they didn't delay and headed to the nearest spatial teleportation station. The Atom Spatial Teleportation Station, ultra-long-distance spatial teleportation point. The three of them, Gu Qijue, handed over their tickets. Gu Qijue and Tian Li were both very relaxed, while Zai Ling felt a bit nervous, wondering if their tickets would be valid. It turned out her worries were unnecessary. The ticket inspector only checked the authenticity of the tickets, not their origin. The source of their 3 tickets was questionable, but their authenticity was not. The 3 of them then smoothly entered the ultra-long-distance spatial teleportation device again and began their journey. The people of Shenhuang Continent and Emperor Star would soon gain a better understanding of the Vermilion Bird Star Cluster and the frontline battlefield. Such an ultra-long-distance teleportation required numerous wormhole jumps and would take some time to complete. After about half an hour, the 3 of them completed the teleportation and returned to Shenhuang Continent. Upon arriving at Shenhuang Continent, Tian Li shouted excitedly, "I'm free!" Gu Qijue nodded. "Yes, Your Excellency Tian Li. You are free during our cooperation, and the 3 of us are in this together." He said this to warn Tian Li, signaling the old man not to act recklessly. Tian Li nodded solemnly and spoke sincerely, "Chief Gu. Your Excellency Zai Ling, you too can rest assured, I am a sensible person. In the current situation, we both benefit if we cooperate, and both lose if we split. I will use my abilities to create as much value as possible for you two. I also ask that you two provide as much assistance as possible to the Tianyuan Star Cluster civilization." Gu Qijue and Zai Ling both nodded. That goes without saying. Afterward, Zai Ling returned to the northern continent section of Shenhuang Continent. Gu Qijue, on the other hand, took Tian Li to the Emperor Star Alliance headquarters in Shenhuang Continent. Tian Li's appearance also changed from a Boar Man to that of an ordinary human. Even on Shenhuang Continent, he still couldn't show his face as a celestial, otherwise it would easily cause trouble. Not long after Gu Qijue and Zai Ling returned, the news that 21 gods had died in this expedition to Shenhuang Continent spread everywhere. Everyone knew that the battlefield of a star cluster-level civilization was extremely dangerous. But people clearly hadn't expected the star cluster-level civilization battlefield to be dangerous to such an extent. It took Shenhuang continent countless years to acquire so many gods. Yet, after a single trial on the star cluster-level battlefield, so many died in battle. Of course, neither Gu Qijue nor Zai Ling concealed this sudden incident. But even with a sudden incident, such a thing was still too terrifying. If there was a sudden incident this time, who knew if there would be one next time? Originally, the other 8 continental sections of Shenhuang continent were quite resistant to the Emperor Star Alliance. Now, they no longer resisted at all and began to find ways to gain the friendship of Emperor Star. 207. The Uncrowned King, a new civilization discovered, the arrival of the Vermilion Bird Star Cluster's special envoy, followed by the trip to the star cluster-level battlefield. This made the Emperor Star Alliance, ruled by Gu Qijue, the biggest beneficiary. Among the other 8 continental plates of the Shenhuang continent, Zai Ling, the top expert of the northern continental plate, became an ally of the Emperor Star. The other 7 continental plates suffered heavy losses of god-rank experts. This allowed the Emperor Star Alliance to instantly become the undisputed hegemon of the Shenhuang continent. Although Gu Qijue had not yet completed the great endeavor of unifying the Shenhuang continent, he was now the undisputed uncrowned king of the Shenhuang continent. There was a title that suited him perfectly now, Lord of the Desolate Star System. The first thing Gu Qijue did upon returning was to convene the Supreme Meeting of the Desolate Star System Alliance. The venue for the Supreme Meeting was the Supreme Conference Hall of the Emperor Star Alliance. Previously, Gu Qijue's title as Alliance Head was merely nominal, so the Desolate Star System did not have its own Supreme Conference Hall. After Gu Qijue's orders spread everywhere, the 8 continental plates of the Shenhuang continent each dispatched 3 experts to attend the meeting. Inside the Supreme Conference Hall of the Emperor Star Alliance in the South Heng Domain, Gu Qijue, the Vice Head of State Dai Qi of the Emperor Star Alliance, and Jai Tianyu attended the meeting. Including Zai Ling, a total of 24 experts from the other 8 continental plates arrived. After everyone had gathered, Gu Qijue spoke first. This is the first meeting of the Desolate Star System Alliance. Such meetings will be held regularly in the future. The purpose of the meeting is to allow all members of the Desolate Star System Alliance to better develop and progress together. Today's meeting will mainly discuss 3 matters. After Gu Qijue finished speaking, Yi Wuchen, a god-rank expert from the Western Continental Plate, immediately spoke up. Before the meeting officially proceeds, shouldn't we elect a Vice Alliance head? Currently, the Desolate Star System Alliance only had Gu Qijue as the Alliance head, without even a Vice Alliance head. The so-called Desolate Star System Alliance was no different from Gu Qijue's one-man show. After Yi Wuchen finished speaking, the other experts did not voice their support. If it were before, they definitely would have spoken up. Now, every continental plate had lost 3 god ranks. At this time, no one was willing to stand up and challenge Gu Qijue. Sure enough, after Yi Wuchen made his suggestion, Gu Qijue smiled and said, "Gentlemen, is that necessary?" No one answered his question, because they dared not risk offending the Emperor Star to refute Gu Qijue, nor did they want the Desolate Star System to become Gu Qijue's one-man show. Yi Wuchen originally thought that after he took the lead, others would speak up one after another. Seeing everyone remain silent, he became extremely angry and simply stopped talking nonsense. Seeing that no one was speaking, Gu Qijue immediately continued. As I just mentioned, there are 3 main matters to discuss at this meeting. The first matter is that internal conflicts are forbidden in the Desolate Star System from now on, and the 8 continental plates may consider merging into the Emperor Star. The second matter is forming exploration teams to survey the resource planets throughout the Desolate Star System, and to see, incidentally, if there are any other civilizations formed by intelligent life in the Desolate Star System, apart from the Emperor Star and the Shenhuang continent. The third matter is to successively dispatch representatives from all sides to enter the Bifeng battlefield for trials. This is an order from the Vermilion Bird Empire, and also an opportunity for our rapid development. In the Bifeng battlefield, you can obtain merit points and various advanced resources. Merit points can be exchanged for advanced items and rare items in the Vermilion Bird Empire, while the advanced resources obtained in the Bifeng battlefield can be sold or brought back to the Shenhuang continent. After Gu Qijue finished speaking, the many god-rank experts began whispering among themselves. Everyone was currently very fearful of the Bifeng battlefield. 21 god-rank experts just like them had recently died in battle. How could they not be afraid? However, they were somewhat tempted by the benefits Gu Qijue mentioned. For a time, many God-rank experts became indecisive, unsure of what to do. While Gu Qijue was convening the supreme meeting of the desolate star system, Tian Li was performing calculations. He was calculating and analyzing the observation data of the Emperor star, a planet, as long as it has a safe universe environment and relatively abundant resources, has the potential to give birth to life. There are many planets in the desolate star system that meet the basic requirements for the existence of life. However, based on the observation data, most planets do not have life. After a round of calculation and analysis, Tian Li discovered a set of abnormal data. Although some unexpected factors in the universe environment can also cause abnormal data, but it is also possible that this set of abnormal data was caused artificially. If so, there are actually two other civilizations existing on the edge of the desolate star system. One of these two civilizations is a stellar-level civilization, already capable of building devices similar to a Dyson sphere. The other civilization is at a very low level, likely still using chemical rockets to wildly launch space junk into space. After Tian Li recorded the two coordinates, he said to Gu Yinling, who was not far away, "I need a starship capable of space jump." Gu Yinling shook his head. "Your Excellency Tian Li, without Godfather's permission, you cannot leave the Shenhuang continent." Tian Li was helpless. But after thinking for a moment, he said to Gu Yinling, "I won't leave the Shenhuang continent, you go check these two coordinates." Although there is a high probability that there is nothing near these two coordinates, but there is still a certain probability that intelligent life exists. Places where intelligent life is born are usually resource-rich lands. If the desolate star system wants to rapidly develop into a star cluster-level civilization, it needs to mobilize the enthusiasm of all intelligent life throughout the entire star system. It needs to fully utilize all resources in the entire star system. It needs, just as Tian Li was about to launch into a long speech, Gu Yinling quickly raised a hand and said, "That's enough, Your Excellency Tian Li. Give me the coordinates, and I'll go take a look." Tian Li did not hesitate and sent the two spatial coordinates to Gu Yinling. Gu Yinling quickly boarded an Emperor starship and headed out to explore. After several space jumps, he arrived at an extremely vast and desolate area. In this area, the number of stars was very small, and the entire universe was pitch black. However, when he arrived at the first coordinate Tian Li mentioned, Gu Yinling discovered a comprehensive civilization that had barely crossed into the stellar-level civilization rank. This civilization possessed superpowered individuals and also very crude technology. Moreover, the indigenous inhabitants of this planet were all cat people. Regardless of gender, they all had cat ears and cat tails. Because of the technological gap, Gu Yinling was not discovered by the natives of Cat Star when he appeared there. He quickly continued to the other spatial coordinate point. Tian Li was right again this time. This place truly had a backward civilization that used chemical rockets to send flying vehicles into space. Wishing everyone a happy new year. Good health for the whole family and abundant wealth. 208, to show our sincerity, an F-class cosmic starship. Wherever civilizations are born, resources are relatively abundant. Gu Yinling did not enter Link Star or Forest Star. Instead, she used the starship's detector in space to explore the two planets and their surrounding environment. The exploration results were gratifying. Both planets had a large number of intelligent life forms. Furthermore, these two planets and their surroundings possessed abundant resources. Gu Yinling quickly transmitted the information she had explored back to the Emperor Star Alliance's headquarters on the southeast continent. While she was doing these things, Gu Qijue had just finished the highest meeting of the Desolate Star System Alliance. After arranging everything, Gu Qijue went to find Tian Li. He met Tian Li at a manufacturing center of the Infinite Group. After Gu Qijue arrived, Tian Li smiled and said, "I have two pieces of good news for you." Hearing this, Gu Qijue casually asked, "What good news?" Tian Li said, "I discovered two planets with intelligent life in the Desolate Star System." Gu Qijue was somewhat surprised. The Desolate Star System has other planets with intelligent life? Why didn't the Vermilion Bird Star Cluster's exploration fleet discover them before? Tian Li seemed to have anticipated that Gu Qijue might ask this question. He immediately said without hesitation, "Because those two planets were outside the detection range of the life detectors carried by the starships. I deduced the possible existence of intelligent life in those two places through extensive data calculation and analysis, and then had Gu Yinling go investigate." With Tian Li's explanation, Gu Qijue understood. Although the Vermilion Bird Star Cluster's exploration fleet had very advanced high-tech, they were in a state of knowing the what but not the why. They would only mechanically use life detectors for large-scale exploration. They couldn't make bold judgments and predictions through mathematical calculations and analysis like Tian Li. Gu Qijue immediately continued to ask, besides these two intelligent civilizations, is it possible for intelligent civilizations to arise elsewhere in the desolate star system? Tian Li shook his head. The probability is very low. I had people investigate some areas, but no intelligent life was found. However, the resources in these places are relatively rich, so they can be considered resource planets. Gu Qijue was quite interested in these matters, but what he was more interested in, obviously, was how the Emperor Star Alliance could develop into a star cluster-level civilization. After pondering for a moment, he casually asked the question, is it possible for the Emperor Star Alliance to develop into a star cluster-level civilization? A star cluster-level civilization is more accurately called a galaxy cluster civilization. Currently, Emperor Star and Shenhuang Continent can only be considered quasi-galaxy civilizations, and there is a huge gap between galaxy civilizations themselves. The gap between a galaxy civilization and a star cluster-level civilization is even greater. Tian Li remained silent for a long time before answering Gu Qijue's question, almost impossible. His answer did not excite Gu Qijue, and even left him a little disappointed. Gu Qijue could only ask, why is that? Tian Li said seriously. Because the Vermilion Bird Empire has a very high degree of control over the Vermilion Bird Star Cluster. Once Emperor Star develops to a certain extent, it will be divided and suppressed by the Vermilion Bird Empire. Under no circumstances will the Vermilion Bird Empire allow a second star cluster-level civilization to emerge in the Vermilion Bird Star Cluster. So Chief Gu's goal should be to make Emperor Star a top-tier galaxy-level civilization, and then consider further steps. To become a top-tier galaxy-level civilization, a large amount of technological reserves and combat troop reserves are needed. At the same time, a certain number of E-rank universe-level experts, and even D-rank universe-level experts, are required. Gu Qijue did not interrupt while Tian Li was speaking. Although his goal was to become a star cluster-level civilization, becoming one also required taking it one step at a time. What he needed to do most right now was clearly to strengthen his rule over the desolate star system, to make the entire desolate star system act according to his will. After Tian Li finished speaking, Gu Qijue smiled and said, tell me something practical and actionable. He was asking Tian Li for benefits, which was precisely Tian Li's value. Tian Li did not refuse Gu Qijue's request. I can provide a lot of help to the Emperor Star Alliance and Shenhuang Continent. To show my sincerity, I can offer 3 forms of assistance first. First, I can provide the Emperor Star Alliance with the complete theory and manufacturing method for subspace manufacturing workshops. Second, I can manufacture demigod rank and god rank nanite mecha for the Emperor Star Alliance. Third, I can upgrade the starships for the Emperor Star Alliance. Currently, the Emperor Star Alliance's starships have not reached F-rank cosmic level, and their combat capabilities are very weak. F-class cosmic starships possess destructive power comparable to F-rank universe-level experts. Gu Qijue was quite satisfied with these 3 benefits offered by Tian Li. He took a huge risk, used a drastic measure, and rescued Tian Li precisely to make this prodigy work. It now seemed that his risky rescue of Tian Li was completely worthwhile. This was indeed a very high-end talent. The subspace manufacturing workshop was equivalent to a very crude and basic infinite engine. Although Tian Li couldn't manufacture the infinite engine, his approach was sound. Continuing to research along this line of thought, the subspace manufacturing workshop would inevitably become more and more powerful. As for god-rank nanite mecha, that was even more extraordinary. On Shenhuang Continent, demigod-rank combat power and god-rank combat power were very valuable. Possessing god-rank nanite mecha meant being able to mass-produce deities. As for manufacturing F-class cosmic starships for the Emperor Star Alliance, this was even better for enhancing the Emperor Star Alliance's combat capabilities, although his infinite engine could also do many things. However, the infinite engine still couldn't replace a top talent like Tian Li. At this point, the main business of Emperor Star was concluded. It was time to discuss the main business of the Tianyuan civilization. One of the important aspects of Gu Qijue's cooperation with Tian Li was to help Tian Li rebuild the Tianyuan civilization. This matter also held immense benefits for Gu Qijue. in the process of rebuilding the Tianyuan star cluster civilization. The top talents of the Tianyuan star cluster civilization would clearly only be able to settle down on Emperor Star and participate in Emperor Star's construction. Gu Qijue looked at Tian Li and asked, "What is the current situation of the intelligent races of the Tianyuan star cluster civilization?" Upon hearing this, Tian Li couldn't help but sigh deeply. After a long while, he said, "Most people are separated from their families, homeless. After I helped the Emperor Star Alliance manufacture a certain number of F-class cosmic starships, I hope Chief Gu can take in as many refugees from the Tianyuan star cluster civilization as possible." 209. The Divine Wilderness continent merged into Emperor Star. Hearing Tian Li's request, Gu Qijue nodded. The cost Emperor Star needed to pay to take in the refugees from the Tianyuan star cluster civilization was merely some food and shelter. Now that the Emperor Star Alliance was rich and powerful, they certainly wouldn't lack food for the refugees. As for living space, the Emperor Star Alliance had even more than enough. The entire southeast continent section was under Gu Qijue's control. Not only that, but as time passed, the entire Shenhuang continent would be completely controlled by him. And among these refugees from the Tianyuan star cluster civilization, there were definitely top talents. Tian Li didn't know what Gu Qijue was thinking, but as long as Gu Qijue was willing to provide him with help and shelter, that was enough. Following this, Tian Li and Emperor Star officially began a series of collaborations. While Tian Li and the other experts of the Emperor Star Alliance were busy, Gu Qijue began his push toward the God rank realm. After gaining control of the entire southeast continent section, he already possessed massive amounts of resources. His next move was to ensure that the resources of the entire Shenhuang continent were available for his use. This process would also be extremely smooth. In the northern continent section, after the Supreme Conference of the Desolate Star System concluded, Zai Ling began persuading the other experts of the northern continent section. She was already the strongest expert in the northern continent section, commanding the northern continent section's top force, the Purple Heaven Palace. After she decided to join the Emperor Star Alliance, the other experts had no choice at all. Following the northern continent section, the other continent sections were greatly shaken. They naturally understood that there was no future in resisting within the Vermilion Bird Galaxy cluster, especially for pure cultivation civilizations like theirs. The disadvantage was too obvious when facing top galaxy-level civilizations and star cluster-level civilizations. However, the experts of the other 7 continent sections still wanted to govern themselves and did not want to become part of Emperor Star. This idea of theirs certainly wouldn't last long, because while they were still wavering, a truly shocking piece of news suddenly spread. The head of the Emperor Star Alliance, Gu Qijue, has advanced to God rank. Although God rank experts were rare on the Shenhuang continent, they were not non-existent. Normally, an expert advancing to God rank wasn't a big deal. But Gu Qijue was different. He had slain many God ranks even when he was still in the demigod stage. Now that he had entered God rank, he was absolutely an unrivaled force among God rank warriors. Capable of fighting super God rank warriors across realms, the 7 continent sections that had been wavering subsequently chose to submit. They had each lost 3 God ranks and their strength was severely damaged. Furthermore, they also wanted to leave the Shenhuang continent and seek opportunity in the wider universe. Under these circumstances, submitting to Gu Qijue and becoming a part of the Emperor Star Alliance was their only choice. Gu Qijue emerged from the Infinite Group headquarters cultivation base and heard a string of good news. The one who came to report this good news to him was his adopted son, Gu Yinling. Adopted father, while you were in seclusion, Your Excellency Zai Ling first led the Northern Continent Section forces to pledge allegiance to the Emperor Star Alliance. After the news of your breakthrough to God rank spread, the other 7 continent sections successively joined the Emperor Star Alliance. Gu Qijue nodded slightly. This was all good news, although unexpected. It was reasonable. What he was more concerned about was the progress on Tian Li's side. How is the progress on the projects overseen by Your Excellency Tian Li? Hearing this, Gu Yinling quickly handed a document to Gu Qijue. Gu Qijue casually opened it to look, while Gu Yinling simultaneously provided the report. Of the 3 projects overseen by Your Excellency Tian Li, the second and third projects have both completed Phase 1. The first project, however, lacks some materials and cannot begin Phase 1. Your Excellency Tian Li divided all 3 projects into 3 phases for completion. The second project Tian Li was responsible for was manufacturing God-rank nanite mecha for the Emperor Star Alliance. These nanite mecha required the wearer to be a demigod. Otherwise, it would be difficult to unleash the mecha's full power. The third project was the manufacturing of F-class cosmic starships. Judging from Gu Yinling's report, Tian Li was quite sincere, and the progress on both projects was very good. Gu Qijue didn't continue questioning Gu Yinling. Instead, he said, "I'll go take a look." Having said that, he took Gu Yinling and headed toward Tian Li's location, Infinite Group Floating Base. Tian Li's laboratory. This place was specially allocated by the Infinite Group for Tian Li's use while Gu Qijue was in secluded cultivation. Upon seeing Gu Qijue, Tian Li immediately said, "Neither Emperor Star nor Shenhuang Continent has materials that can substitute for some of the materials needed to build the subspace manufacturing workshop. The desolate star system might have them, but exploring for them would be time-consuming. My suggestion is to purchase them on the black market. Not only does the subspace manufacturing workshop lack materials, but Phase 2 and Phase 3 of the other two projects also lack materials. Additionally, some of my other projects also require many materials and equipment. Here is a list. Can you see if we can buy everything at once?" Tian Li was very considerate. He organized the list for Gu Qijue and included an estimated price list. After seeing the total expenditure for purchasing the materials and equipment, even the wealthy and powerful Gu Qijue couldn't help but gasp. "Did you add an extra zero? Are you sure it's 10 billion Chester?" Gu Qijue looked at the string of numbers on the price list and asked uncertainly. Tian Li nodded, saying, "I calculated it. With the Infinite Group's financial resources, producing 10 billion Chester should not be a problem." Gu Qijue gave a wry smile. "It's certainly not a problem, but after spending 10 billion Chester, the Infinite Group's other operations will face tight funding." He thought seriously for a moment, then handed the list to Tian Li and said, "Cross off the materials and equipment that aren't immediately needed. A budget of around 5 billion Chester should be sufficient. Or, you can devise a more cost-effective plan, and I will implement it." When Tian Li heard Gu Qijue say he would only provide a budget of 5 billion Chester, he nearly spat blood. It wasn't like he was lining his own pockets. Technological research and development inherently required massive spending. Materials cost money, equipment costs money, and production and processing cost money. That 10 billion Chester would be spent precisely where it was needed. Fortunately, Gu Qijue wasn't just giving him 5 billion Chester, he also offered an alternative solution. Tian Li immediately stopped being polite with Gu Qijue and said directly, "There are large numbers of space pirates in the universe. The strength and financial resources of these space pirates vary widely. After my investigation, I found that although Emperor Star is not wealthy, it possesses strong combat capabilities. Emperor Star can organize a combat force composed of demigod warriors and god-rank warriors specializing in robbing space pirates. 210 space pirates. Delta Metal Mines. The leaders of ordinary forces might not agree to Tian Li's proposal. But when Tian Li made this proposal to Gu Qijue, he had found the right person. For no other reason than this, Gu Qijue loved doing business that yielded massive profits with minimal investment. He even prepared to lead the team himself to carry out this task. Gu Qijue looked at Tian Li and asked, "Did the Tianyuan Star Cluster civilization often do this kind of highly profitable business before?" Tian Li hesitated for a moment before nodding. The Tianyuan Star Cluster civilization was powerful, and these space pirates had long been their hunting targets. After Tian Li nodded, Gu Qijue was delighted and asked, "How many god-rank warriors and how many demigod warriors should act together?" Tian Li said seriously, "Under normal circumstances, 12 god-rank or demigod warriors form a small team. Usually, only one starship is dispatched each time. If there are too many starships, the target is easily scared away. Once the starship approaches the space pirate's lair, they can quickly launch the operation. If Chief Gu wants to use this plan, I can concentrate resources to first help Emperor Star manufacture an F-class cosmic starship." Upon hearing this, Gu Qijue immediately decided, "Good, let's do it. If you have any requirements, tell Gu Yinling. I will handle the personnel arrangements." The personnel arrangement, of course, was to determine exactly who would go out to commit Black Eats Black, rob the robbers. First, he definitely had to go, followed by the Moon God, Celestial Zither Goddess, Victoria, and others. As for the remaining spots, he would see if anyone from the other 8 continental plates was willing to go exploring. After Gu Qijue made the news public, Zai Ling was the first to sign up. followed by several other God rank experts. Although Tian Li's F-class cosmic starship was not yet finished, but Gu Qijue had already selected the combat unit for this expedition. The efficiency of Tian Li and the Infinite Group was naturally extremely high. Tian Li provided the technology, and the Infinite Group provided the equipment and labor. Through the joint efforts of both parties, the Infinite Group's most advanced starship completed its upgrade and iteration. It went from being an ordinary starship to an F-rank cosmic-level starship. A starship of this level can perform ultra-long-distance space teleportation, although it consumes a lot of energy. However, since Gu Qijue was engaging in a highly profitable business, he didn't care about this minor energy loss at all. This time, Tian Li chose to accompany Gu Qijue and the others on the expedition. It wasn't because he was planning any tricks. Rather, the current starship was a rushed product. If any problems occurred during use and he wasn't nearby, it would be troublesome. After everyone boarded the starship, Tian Li took charge of piloting. While piloting, he explained things to Gu Qijue. This F-class cosmic starship is basically fully automated. Startup, cruising, and even combat can all be completed by the starship's smart brain. However, if there is a genius who is very skilled at piloting and using the starship for combat, it can still be switched back to manual mode. After Tian Li finished speaking, Gu Qijue's heart stirred. Although he might not be a top genius at piloting a starship, experiencing starship piloting was certainly possible. He immediately said, "Your Excellency Tian Li, I'll try piloting it." All right. Tian Li did not refuse and led Gu Qijue to the pilot seat. From this pilot seat, one could not only see the scenery ahead of the starship, but also view the surrounding situation via the monitoring screen. Under Tian Li's guidance, Gu Qijue began manually piloting the F-class cosmic starship. Without sufficient strength, reaction speed cannot meet the piloting requirements. Fortunately, Gu Qijue was already a God rank expert, so he naturally had no such concerns. He quickly activated the starship to perform ultra-long-distance space teleportation. This time, he wasn't performing just one ultra-long-distance space teleportation, but several, going directly outside the Vermilion Bird star cluster. Of course, there were space pirates within the Vermilion Bird star cluster, but Tian Li did not have accurate data. The data he possessed were records of space pirates compiled by the Tianyuan star cluster-level civilization, which they hadn't had time to attack yet. These space pirates were all located in the intermediate regions between the Vermilion Bird star cluster and other star clusters. Finding them would not be an easy task, but Tian Li had their coordinates. As long as they hadn't moved far from their original dwelling places, they would be found by Tian Li and Gu Qijue. Under normal circumstances, these space pirates would naturally not move their lairs easily. After Gu Qijue and Tian Li completed several ultra-long-distance space teleportations, the corresponding information about the space pirates appeared on the starship's display screen. Gu Qijue did not rush to act, but instead inquired about the specifics. What is the name of this space pirate group? How many people do they have? How many experts? What are the benefits of taking down this space pirate group? After Gu Qijue asked, Tian Li replied seriously, "The name of this space pirate group is Maple Leaf, or they can be called the Red Maple Space Pirates. Their numbers are around 200 people, most of whom are Imperial rank and demigod warriors. The number of God rank warriors is approximately 10. By taking down this space pirate group, we can seize their Delta Metal mine. Delta Metal is a special type of high-strength metal. It can be used to create Delta Alloy, which has higher strength and toughness, and possesses a very wide range of uses. Delta Alloy can be used directly to forge cold weapons, and it can also be used to forge thermal weapons. Furthermore, many top-tier flying vehicles and top-tier equipment also require this kind of excellent material to be constructed." After Tian Li finished speaking, Gu Qijue and the others understood. This time, they needed to find a way to eliminate all the space pirates entrenched in this area. Then, they would excavate the entire Delta Metal mine in this location. The Red Maple space pirates entrenched here naturally had no idea they had been targeted. Although they controlled a Delta Metal mine mining area, they had been safe and sound all this time. The Red Maple space pirates in this area had not yet noticed a group of uninvited guests approaching. They had always engaged in minor skirmishes and had never dealt with forces that were too powerful. While the Red Maple space pirates were busy working, Gu Qijue had already appeared not far from them. He didn't rush to act. He planned to capture a space pirate for interrogation. Although Tian Li provided him with a lot of intelligence, intelligence is time-sensitive. The past situation might very well be different from the current situation. Gu Qijue's luck was also excellent, just as he was thinking of capturing a space pirate for interrogation. A space pirate happened to leave alone. Gu Qijue didn't care why the person was acting alone, he prepared to capture them. As long as he captured this space pirate and questioned them, he could obtain first-hand intelligence. 211. Space Pirate Trader, Battle Axe Mech. This was Gu Qijue's first time leading people out to do such a lucrative business. So he was extremely cautious. He personally took action against the space pirates they encountered this time. The space pirate Gu Qijue saw was named Ding Xin. There are many civilizations in the Vermilion Bird Star Cluster, and their naming conventions vary. Some civilizations are even so peculiar as to use numbers as names. Ding Xin's name was considered normal. It would be fine on Emperor Star or Shenhuang continent. However, this space pirate Ding Xin had a problem. The reason he was acting alone was because he wanted to escape. He wanted to sell information about this group of space pirates to others. Yes, he wanted to be a traitor. Following this group of space pirates to rob starships, space stations, and asteroids, his personal gains were always very limited. But if he betrayed this group of space pirates, he could gain vast wealth. It's just that such immense fortune was destined to have nothing to do with Ding Xin. Because Gu Qijue, the dominator of Emperor Star and Shenhuang continent, had already set his sights on the resources owned by these space pirates. Ding Xin was cautiously traversing the Void Realm. He was currently crossing space with his physical body, which was a relatively dangerous endeavor. But he didn't care, his strength was decent, and he was experienced in such matters. As soon as he was a certain distance away from these space pirates, he would take out his starship and leave this damned place directly. Ding Xin, of course, never imagined that he wouldn't be able to leave. While he was still cautiously moving forward, a figure suddenly appeared in front of him. Then he, a demigod, was easily subdued by the other party. The next moment, Ding Xin was captured by Gu Qijue and brought back to the Emperor starship. Without a word, Ding Xin was about to send a distress signal to the surrounding space pirates. Although he intended to be a turncoat, he hadn't actually become one yet, had he? Gu Qijue was originally going to stop Ding Xin, but Tian Li suddenly smiled and said to Ding Xin, "Do you think the brick in your hand can penetrate the Tianyuan civilization's shielding system and send out a signal?" In this small corner of the universe, the Tianyuan star cluster level civilization was universally recognized as having the leading technology. If not for that, the Tianyuan star cluster would not have been able to fight on 3 fronts and still force 3 star cluster level civilizations to retreat repeatedly. If not for being ambushed and having its high-ranking officials wiped out in the end, the Tianyuan star cluster civilization would have been the big boss of this region. Ding Xin heard Tian Li's words, first with disdain. Then he froze. His face couldn't help but reveal a look as if he had seen a ghost. "You are from the Tianyuan star cluster civilization. Your Excellency Tian Li?" As the chief scientist of the Tianyuan star cluster civilization, Tian Li was very well known. Many key technologies in the Vermilion Bird Star Cluster, Qianqi Star Cluster, and many surrounding star clusters used Tian Li's patents. After Tian Li spoke, Ding Xin didn't make any futile struggles. The signal transmitter in his hand absolutely could not break through the Tianyuan civilization's shielding barrier to send messages to the outside world. Seeing Tian Li so easily intimidate Ding Xin, Gu Qijue didn't waste any time and immediately began to question him. How many powerhouses do these space pirates have now? Do they have any special technological weapons? Ding Xin heard Gu Qijue's question but did not speak. When Gu Qijue's eyes turned cold, he quickly said, "Can I live if I tell the truth?" Gu Qijue nodded, "Yes." After he agreed, Ding Xin immediately relaxed. He found a place to sit down on his own, then said, "I can tell the truth. And I can also provide a lot of very useful information, but I need benefits." Gu Qijue casually asked, "What benefits?" Ding Xin held up 3 fingers and said seriously, "I know a very valuable piece of extra information, and this information can definitely be exchanged for 3 benefits. Because the information I know is about where a vice head of state of the Tianyuan star cluster civilization is being held." Ding Xin saw Gu Qijue and Tian Li together and assumed this group was from the Tianyuan star cluster civilization. The Tianyuan star cluster civilization had 1 head of state and 3 vice heads of state in total. Now their head of state had died in battle, and the remaining 3 vice heads of state all had the potential to become the head of state. Against such a backdrop, the value of a vice head of state was, of course, very high. Unfortunately, before Tian Li could express his stance, Gu Qijue said, "You don't need to state your conditions. because we are not interested in this vice head of state. If Ding Xin had said where one of the top 5 scientists of the Tianyuan star cluster civilization was trapped, then Gu Qijue would have been very interested. Tian Li's performance had already made him realize the value of top talent, but Ding Xin telling him where there was a vice head of state of the Tianyuan star cluster civilization was just asking for trouble. If Gu Qijue planned to support Tian Li to become the head of state of the Tianyuan star cluster civilization in the future, then all these obstacles would have to be eliminated. Ding Xin was completely stunned. You don't want to save your vice head of state? After speaking, he also looked at Tian Li. It was better that he didn't say this. As soon as he did, Tian Li got angry. He had long said not to fight on 3 fronts or even 2 fronts, but these fools just wouldn't listen, otherwise. How could the Tianyuan star cluster civilization have been destroyed? Now he was supposed to save these fools. He only wanted to use a technical star-destroying cannon to blast these fools to smithereens. Without Tian Li's answer, Ding Xin also knew that Tian Li didn't want to save the vice head of state of the Tianyuan star cluster civilization. He immediately stopped trying to be clever and began to seriously answer Gu Qijue's previous question. We have over 150 members in total. Our leader is Liu Meng, a super god rank 5 powerhouse. Besides him, we also have 10 god ranks and a number of demigods and imperial ranks. We only have one powerful technological weapon, called the Tomahawk mech. This is a god rank mech that doesn't require human control, and its combat capabilities are very strong. Even ordinary god rank warriors are no match for the Tomahawk mech. At this point, Ding Xin suddenly remembered an important piece of information. That was, Tian Hao, one of the top 10 scientists of the Tianyuan star cluster civilization, had also been captured by them. However, Tian Li and Gu Qijue didn't even care about the life or death of the vice head of state of the Tianyuan star cluster civilization, so they obviously wouldn't care about Tian Hao, a starship expert. Ding Xin, however, didn't know that he was wrong this time. Gu Qijue was indifferent to the high-ranking officials of the Tianyuan star cluster civilization, but he highly valued the top talents of the Tianyuan star cluster civilization. If Ding Xin had revealed this information now, Gu Qijue might have credited him with a meritorious deed, but Ding Xin was clearly not destined for such fortune. He thought that saying more would lead to more mistakes. Therefore, he would absolutely not say anything that Gu Qijue didn't ask. Gu Qijue was naturally very satisfied with his attitude, and the group immediately decided to take action. 212. The raid begins. The pirate leader is dead. On an asteroid Liu Meng was drinking. He was in a very good mood, because he had a big fish in his hands. Although Tian Hao's influence in the Tianyuan star cluster civilization could not be compared with Tian Li's. However, the Vermilion Bird star cluster and the Qianqi star cluster were already fighting fiercely over Tian Li. He would obviously make a fortune by selling Tian Hao to the Vermilion Bird star cluster or the Qianqi star cluster at an opportune time. But Liu Meng would never have imagined that this immense wealth would have nothing to do with him. While Liu Meng was still holding a celebratory banquet with his many subordinates, a ray from a focused star-destroying cannon suddenly blasted the asteroid's protective layer. Boom, crack. Crack, the protective layer of this asteroid was built by Liu Meng with a hefty sum. Ordinary starships could not do anything to this asteroid at all. Enemy attack. Enemies are here. Everyone, be on alert. After the asteroid's protective layer was shattered, the numerous space pirates immediately fell into disarray. Everyone looked nervously at their leader. It was the first time they had encountered such a situation since following Liu Meng. Fortunately, while everyone else was in chaos, their leader Liu Meng remained very calm. It was as if he didn't even know what nervousness was. Boom! The terrifying power of a super god rank 5th stage soon emanated from Liu Meng. His majestic and domineering voice also swept across this asteroid at this moment. Brothers, watch closely. Today I'll show you what it means to dismantle a starship with bare hands. Although Liu Meng's face was calm, his heart was extremely furious. No matter who was attacking this asteroid, he had already decided that they would not return alive. Thinking this, Liu Meng erupted with incredibly terrifying power and soared into the sky. Many space pirates became excited when they saw how fierce their leader was. Leader is mighty. Leader, smash their broken ship. That's right. Smash their broken ship, from all directions. Countless space pirates cheered incessantly at this moment. Liu Meng's power and confidence clearly infected everyone, making all the space pirates not take the Emperor starship seriously. If it weren't for the concern of damaging the resources, These space pirates would have already experienced the taste of a focused star-destroying cannon. Although he couldn't use the focused star-destroying cannon to attack these space pirates, Gu Qijue still took measures. He didn't let Liu Meng approach the Emperor's starship, but instead appeared outside in his second combat form. Liu Meng didn't pay attention when he saw Gu Qijue. His flaming fist would completely burn Gu Qijue and his broken ship to ashes. As Liu Meng was thinking this, Gu Qijue had already met him head-on, charging fiercely. Seeing this scene, Liu Meng couldn't help but sneer repeatedly, overestimating yourself. As his voice fell, he immediately erupted with even more powerful and domineering strength. The numerous space pirates below naturally cheered in unison. Leader, punch him to bits. That's right. Kill this invader. Make him regret coming into this world. It's best to beat him half to death, then torture him to death, as the many space pirates clamored. Gu Qijue's fist and Liu Meng's fist quickly collided violently. Boom! Suddenly, the heavens crumbled, the earth shattered, and clouds were pierced, rocks split. A terrifying explosion echoed throughout the entire asteroid. The asteroid, larger than most moons, violently shook at this moment. The moment the two collided, a wave of chi energy spread wildly in all directions. Crack, crack! The asteroid's protective layer, which hadn't been completely shattered yet, now continuously broke apart like shattered glass. At the place where Gu Qijue and Liu Meng fought, a figure plummeted towards the ground like a bunker-buster bomb. Many space pirates looked closely and were almost scared to death, because the person falling from the sky was none other than their leader, Liu Meng. In an instant, a thought arose in everyone's mind. The leader has been defeated. After Gu Qijue made his move, the Moon Goddess, Goddess Tianning, Xiling, and other god-rank experts all sprang into action at this moment. Soon, the elite combat unit composed of Emperor Star and Shenhuang Continent began to engage these space pirates. Rather than an engagement, it was a one-sided slaughter. Although this group of space pirates were ruthless killers, their strength was simply not enough in front of Xiling and the others. The strongest among them was Liu Meng, but Liu Meng was also directly stunned by Gu Qijue's punch. At this moment, Liu Meng once again soared into the sky from a pile of shattered rocks. His gaze towards Gu Qijue was no longer disdain, but deep apprehension. Liu Meng frowned deeply and said, "Who are you?" "Your Excellency, we don't seem to have any conflict with you." Gu Qijue did not answer Liu Meng's question, or rather, his answer to Liu Meng was an incomparably fierce punch. Of course, Liu Meng wasn't asking Gu Qijue to answer his question. He intended to use the instantaneous spatial teleportation device to escape directly. Unfortunately, his intention was discovered by Gu Qijue. Facing Gu Qijue's earth-shattering punch, Liu Meng could only unleash his full power to desperately resist. Rumble! Two massive fist shadows exploded in midair, and Liu Meng's figure was once again sent flying by Gu Qijue. At this moment, he had completely lost the chance to use the instantaneous spatial teleportation device. The space in this area was already chaotic and distorted. At this time, it was impossible to teleport away. He would only be able to escape after the spatial anomaly recovered. But he had no chance, because Gu Qijue's third punch had already landed with a crash. Boom! This punch was incredibly terrifying. At its core was a bloody fist shadow, surrounded by a layer of terrifying lightning, and the outermost layer was scorching flames. Blood chi, lightning, and flames, these were the three best powers Gu Qijue currently controlled. When this punch landed, Liu Meng indeed could not resist. In his first state, Gu Qijue had god-rank strength, barely able to contend with super god-rank. In his second state, like Liu Meng, he was also super god rank, with the same major realm. Liu Meng was naturally no match for him, so as soon as they clashed, Liu Meng was easily crushed by him. After 3 punches, Liu Meng was directly killed by him. Liu Meng obviously never dreamed that not long ago he was still contemplating a future of great wealth and nobility. Yet, not long after, he became a part of this asteroid. After killing Liu Meng with 3 punches, Gu Qijue obtained the first Super God Crystal Core. The Super God Crystal Core can be broken down into precious materials, or it can be directly combined with other top-tier materials to create Super God-rank warriors using the Infinite Engine. However, the current Infinite Group doesn't seem to have the corresponding materials. 213, Chief Starship Commander, Holy King Star Cluster. After Gu Qijue swiftly eliminated Liu Meng, the remaining space pirates immediately scattered like monkeys when their tree falls. However, these monkeys couldn't escape either. Gu Qijue hadn't come alone, he had brought many god-rank experts with him. The space pirates who had been entrenched here for an unknown number of years were easily annihilated by Gu Qijue this time. After eliminating all of them, Gu Qijue issued an order to his subordinates: clean up the battlefield, scavenge the spoils of war, and take everything that can be taken. Zai Ling and the others nodded excitedly upon hearing this. These space pirates truly lived up to their reputation as professionals in illicit trades. Their spatial devices contained a large quantity of advanced materials and energy stones. These items belonged to whoever seized them, so everyone was naturally thrilled. Tianli also arrived beside Gu Qijue at this moment. After the battle, it was his turn as a non-combatant to appear. Tianli approached Gu Qijue and said to him, "Let's go check near the alpha metal mine first. Although the enemies in other areas have been eliminated, there might still be other enemies in the mining area." Gu Qijue nodded slightly. "Let's go, I'll keep an eye out." With that, he led Tianli to the mining area. Alpha metal ore is a very top-tier material, reaching even the super god rank in material grade, whether it was Tianli or Gu Qijue. Obtaining these materials would be extremely useful. Tianli's judgment was correct. Enemies were indeed hidden deep within the alpha metal mine tunnels. When Gu Qijue brought Tianli here, he sensed the presence of enemies. However, these enemies weren't very strong. They only possessed imperial rank strength. Enemies of this caliber naturally didn't require much effort. Gu Qijue immediately led Tianli directly into the mine tunnel. After Tianli used his detection equipment to scan, he said excitedly, "The purity of these ores is very high. If our luck is good enough, we might obtain F-rank cosmic-level materials in this place. If we can obtain a large quantity of F-rank cosmic-level materials, we can build an F-rank cosmic-level fleet." Gu Qijue hadn't expected such good fortune again, to encounter such a favorable situation. However, before mining, the enemies in this place still needed to be dealt with first. Gu Qijue and Tianli swiftly moved through the mine tunnels. Before long, he and Tianli arrived at a spacious hall deep within the mine tunnel. This place turned out to be the prison of this group of space pirates. The enemies here were the prison guards. "Who's there?" When the guards discovered Gu Qijue and Tianli, they immediately picked up their laser cannons and fired a laser projectile. A brilliant golden energy sphere instantly blasted towards Gu Qijue. But Gu Qijue didn't even frown. The powerful force field around him disintegrated the energy sphere. Then, his terrifying pressure suppressed all these guards. Before Gu Qijue could speak, Tianli said excitedly, "One of my companions is here." Hearing this, Gu Qijue's spirit immediately lifted. A great master's friend is also a great master. Tianli's friend is most likely a top-tier talent. He originally thought that obtaining super god rank materials, or even F-rank cosmic-level materials, in this place was already incredibly fortunate. He never expected that when good luck arrived, it would be unstoppable. These space pirates had actually captured a big fish. Gu Qijue immediately asked, "Who is it?" Tianli pointed to a cell and said, "It's him." Upon hearing this, Gu Qijue waved his hand, directly destroying the cell. The old man trapped inside also opened his tired eyes at this moment. Tian Hao was extremely excited when he saw Tianli. "Your Excellency Tianli, why are you here?" Tianli smiled and said to Tian Hao, "Your Excellency Tian Hao, let me introduce you to each other. This is the partner for the Tianyuan Star Cluster Civilization Reconstruction Project, the chief of the Emperor Star Civilization and Shenhuang Continent Civilization, Lord Gu Qijue." After speaking, he then introduced Tian Hao to Gu Qijue. "Chief Gu, this is the chief starship master of the Tianyuan Star Cluster Civilization, Your Excellency Tian Hao. In the domain of starship design and manufacturing, Your Excellency Tian Hao is a top-notch expert, second to none in dozens of surrounding star cluster civilizations. 60% of the starship technology in your Vermilion Bird star cluster is related to Your Excellency Tian Hao." After Tian Li's introduction, Gu Qijue was naturally overjoyed. Starship technology is extremely important. With Tian Li and Tian Hao, the development speed of Emperor Star and Shenhuang Continent would definitely be as fast as a starship. He immediately stepped forward and shook hands with Tian Hao in a friendly manner. Tian Hao was a very old celestial, perhaps only through sufficient accumulation of years, learning, research, and exploration could he achieve such accomplishments. Tian Hao was also very excited to learn that Gu Qijue and Tian Li were preparing to rebuild the Tianyuan Star Cluster Civilization. He now solemnly shook hands with Gu Qijue as well. Then Gu Qijue looked at the prisoners in the other cells and asked, "Who are you people?" Before these people could answer, Tian Hao said, "This person and that person are innocent. The others are enemies who destroyed the Tianyuan Star Cluster Civilization." Gu Qijue looked at Tian Li, who nodded. Aside from those two from the Saint King star cluster, everyone else is from the Black Prison star cluster. The Black Prison star cluster is the culprit behind the sneak attack on the Tianyuan star cluster civilization. When Tian Li said this, Gu Qijue understood. He immediately said, "In that case, you deal with it yourselves." Tian Li nodded, and a nanite mecha instantly covered his entire body. He was clearly preparing to personally take action and kill his enemies with his own hands. These people had the blood of their kin on their hands. As Tian Li was about to act, the people from the Black Prison star cluster civilization immediately began a continuous barrage of curses. They clearly knew they had no chance of survival, but before dying, they could still thoroughly curse the remnants of the Tianyuan star cluster civilization. However, Gu Qijue had overestimated Tian Li and Tian Hao. These two were indeed non-combatants, completely lacking in fighting power. After watching outside the cell for a long time, they still didn't know how to proceed. "I'll do it for you," Gu Qijue said, then directly used his powerful pressure to suppress all these imperial rank and demigod warriors. He was currently in his second state of semi-dragon transformation, under his powerful super god rank pressure. Even demigod warriors would be suppressed from 3 dimensions into 2 dimensions. Tian Li let out a sigh of relief and thanked Gu Qijue. "Chief Gu, thank you." After speaking, he looked at the two from the Saint King star cluster and said, "Do you want to pledge allegiance to us, or join them on their journey?" Although the Saint King star cluster was a very powerful star cluster and not to be provoked easily, the news of Tian Li and Tian Hao being on Shenhuang continent could not be exposed. This brother and sister from the Saint King star cluster civilization either joined them, or they died. 214, Descendants of the Holy King, the feud between 2 generations of Holy Kings. The universe is boundless, stars like the sun number in the billions or even more. Within a single galaxy, not only are there many stars, but there are also many galaxies, and the number of star clusters composed of large numbers of galaxies is also substantial. The Holy King star cluster is not primarily a technological civilization, but a martial Dao civilization. Martial Dao civilization and cultivation civilization share many highly similar aspects, but they are not entirely the same. Cultivation civilization, apart from those who practice horizontal body cultivation, generally emphasizes magical techniques and neglects the physical body. They are not overly concerned with their physical body, even if their physical body is destroyed. They can reshape it. Martial Dao civilization, on the other hand, values both the physical body and martial skills simultaneously. The dominator of the Holy King civilization is a powerful D-rank cosmic-level martial Dao expert. The 2 members of the Holy King civilization imprisoned before Gu Qijue soon spoke words that surprised Gu Qijue and his subordinates. The slightly older girl said, "We are willing to submit, and even more willing to cooperate. My younger brother and I are both descendants of the fierce tiger Holy King." In the past, Gu Qijue definitely wouldn't have known about the Holy King star cluster, much less who the fierce tiger Holy King was. The dominators of the Holy King star cluster civilization all use the revered title of Holy King. Within the Holy King star cluster civilization, only the dominator can use the revered title of Holy King. The current Holy King of the Holy King star cluster civilization is the Evil Eye Holy King, and the Evil Eye Holy King was once a subordinate of the fierce tiger Holy King. The Evil Eye Holy King, along with 3 others, launched a rebellion and killed the fierce tiger Holy King. Everyone loyal to the fierce tiger Holy King was also killed. The fierce tiger Holy King's offspring and numerous descendants were massacred. It can be said that Li Ziyu and Li Mingchen, who stood before them, were definitely hot potatoes. Getting involved with these two was tantamount to making an enemy of the Holy King star cluster civilization. Tian Li and Tian Hao could not make a decision regarding this matter. If they were just ordinary members of the Holy King star cluster civilization, they could perhaps be given a chance to live. But since the two were targets the Evil Eye Holy King wanted to hunt down, they clearly couldn't be accepted easily. Tian Li and Tian Hao could only look toward Gu Qijue. Only Gu Qijue could make a decision on such a major issue. Gu Qijue's decision surprised both Tian Li and Tian Hao, and at the same time, it made the siblings Li Ziyu and Li Mingchen breathe a sigh of relief. "Although I don't know what value you hold, I agree to cooperate with you. However, without my permission, neither of you is allowed to have any contact with the outside world." Li Ziyu and Li Mingchen were both extremely happy to hear Gu Qijue's words. This meant that they had temporarily ended their days of hiding. Although they could not interact with the outside world, They could now grow safely for a period of time on Gu Qijue's territory. This made both siblings, Li Ziyu and Li Mingchen, very happy. Although Tian Li and Tian Hao said nothing, their faces were filled with worry. Tian Li hesitated for a moment before actively speaking. Chief Gu, the Evil Eye Holy King is not an easy person to deal with. Since you have decided to take in these siblings, we must ensure strict confidentiality. Otherwise, once the news of their presence on the Shenhuang continent leaks out, the Evil Eye Holy King will definitely stop at nothing to cause trouble. At that time, we will be in danger. Gu Qijue nodded upon hearing this. Don't worry, I know what I'm doing. After speaking, he continued to order, hurry up and gather the resources nearby. Then return to the Shenhuang continent. After he gave the order, Tian Li and the others quickly got to work. The resources and wealth accumulated by Liu Meng and his associates over a long period now all belonged to Gu Qijue. It was no wonder that Liu Meng and the others liked engaging in this kind of risk-free business. Although the risks in this line of work were ridiculously high, the profits were also ridiculously high. Of course, Gu Qijue would not act recklessly like Liu Meng and his gang. Dealing with space pirates was something everyone would applaud. Robbing others like space pirates would only turn them into rats running across the street. Hated by everyone, Gu Qijue and his group came and went like the wind, quickly setting off on their return journey. However, on their way back, a small incident occurred. Ding Xin attempted to escape. If he had cooperated honestly, Gu Qijue truly had no intention of killing him. Since he chose to act recklessly, Gu Qijue naturally wouldn't be polite to such a minor character. With Ding Xin's death, Liu Meng's group of space pirates was completely wiped out. Gu Qijue quickly led the group back to the Shenhuang continent. He had originally intended to establish the Divine Wilderness Empire, but now he had changed his mind. He planned to establish the Infinite Empire. Emperor Star and the Shenhuang continent would only be part of the Infinite Empire's territory. Upon returning to the Shenhuang continent, Gu Qijue, Tian Li and Tian Hao held an advanced meeting. Although the two descendants of the fierce tiger Holy King had high status, they were not permitted to participate in a meeting of this level. Infinite Group Floating Base. Conference Room. Gu Qijue, Tian Li and Tian Hao took their seats one after another. After the three were seated, Gu Qijue spoke first. I plan to establish the Infinite Empire, incorporating Emperor Star and the Shenhuang continent, as well as all valuable resource planets within the desolate star system, into the Infinite Empire's territory. Do the two of you have any suggestions regarding the establishment and development of the Infinite Empire? Tian Li and Tian Hao were previously high-level figures in a star cluster-level civilization. Gu Qijue's Infinite Empire was merely a galaxy-level civilization. Asking the two of them for guidance was, naturally, a piece of cake. Tian Li and Tian Hao exchanged glances, and then Tian Li made a gesture of invitation and said, Your Excellency Tian Hao, please speak first, and I will supplement. Tian Hao did not stand on ceremony, nodding his head and saying, as an ally, I must first congratulate Chief Gu on taking this important step toward governing the desolate star system. The establishment of the Infinite Empire signifies that Chief Gu will possess further dominion over the desolate star system. The strength of a galaxy-level civilization can be measured by the degree of control and utilization it has over the resources within its galaxy. To control all resources within the galaxy requires very advanced starship technology, very powerful armed forces, and spatial transmission technology. The combat troops possessed by Chief Gu and Your Excellency, the head of state, are the strongest armed forces within the desolate star system. Therefore, the issues Chief Gu needs to address are starship technology, spatial transmission technology, and the extraction and utilization of resources. In just a few words, Tian Hao completely laid out what the Infinite Empire needed to accomplish for a long time to come: training troops, gathering resources, manufacturing fleets, and researching technology. After Tian Hao finished speaking, Gu Qijue nodded, then continued to look at Tian Hao, waiting for him to proceed. After a slight hesitation, Tian Hao recommended a talent to Gu Qijue whose fate was unknown. That person was the chief scientist in the field of spatial transmission technology for the Tianyuan civilization. 215, an infinite empire is established. An even greater conquest awaits. Chief Gu, I want to recommend someone to you, Tian Hao said seriously. Hearing his words, Gu Qijue became a little interested and asked, Who is it you want to recommend? Tian Hao solemnly replied, Ling Mi, the chief scientist in the field of spatial transmission technology for the Tianyuan star cluster civilization. Gu Qijue was naturally very interested in such a top talent, so he immediately asked, Where is this person? Tian Li was also very concerned about this question, because he also didn't know where Ling Mi was. However, Tian Hao shook his head this time. She might already be dead, or she might have successfully escaped, or she might have been captured by some force. Tian Hao's inability to provide accurate information left Gu Qijue helpless. If Ling Mi had been captured, they could still find a way to rescue her. But now, they had no idea where Ling Mi was, so they couldn't rescue her even if they wanted to. Gu Qijue pondered for a moment and asked, "Can the two of you contact Ling Mi?" Both Tian Hao and Tian Li shook their heads. Tian Li even revealed news that Gu Qijue didn't know. There's a traitor among the high-ranking officials of the Tianyuan Star Cluster civilization. Our communication devices, positioning devices, and previous contact methods cannot be easily used. With that, Gu Qijue could only give up on finding Ling Mi. There was no information. No clues. Looking for Ling Mi like this wasn't like finding a needle in a haystack, but finding a needle in the universe. Tian Li seemed to understand Gu Qijue's thoughts, but still offered Gu Qijue an idea. "Your Excellency, the head of state, you can personally lead a team to receive the refugees from the Tianyuan Star Cluster civilization. Outwardly, you can say that the development of the desolate star system requires more manpower. As long as Your Excellency, the head of state, shows goodwill towards the Tianyuan Star Cluster civilization, and Ling Mi hasn't been captured. It's likely that Ling Mi will take the initiative to contact Your Excellency, the head of state, and then Your Excellency, the head of state, can communicate with Ling Mi." Gu Qijue's heart stirred after listening, finding it very reasonable. It was like if Emperor Star ever suffered a catastrophic disaster, if he escaped, he would definitely secretly try to keep an eye on his many friends and subordinates. He immediately decided, after the Infinite Empire's inauguration ceremony, I will go to the border of the Tianyuan Star Cluster civilization to receive refugees. During this period, I trouble the two of you to lead the engineers of the Emperor Star Alliance to build as many starships and various weapons as possible. Tian Li and Tian Hao nodded solemnly upon hearing this. "We will do our utmost." After discussing these matters, Gu Qijue announced a shocking piece of news. Everyone in the Emperor Star Alliance and everyone on Shenhuang continent learned something extremely astonishing. Gu Qijue's image appeared on all kinds of equipment, large and small, across the entire Shenhuang continent and Emperor Star. "Citizens of Emperor Star and Shenhuang continent, I am Gu Qijue, the joint head of state of Emperor Star and Shenhuang continent. I am now going to announce a very important matter. From this moment on, the Infinite Empire is officially established. Emperor Star and Shenhuang continent, as well as the entire desolate star system, will be part of the Infinite Empire's territory. Dai Qi is hereby appointed as the person in charge of Emperor Star, and concurrently as the vice head of state of the Infinite Empire. Jai Tianyu is hereby appointed as the person in charge of Shenhuang continent, and concurrently as the vice head of state of the Infinite Empire. Zai Ling is hereby appointed as the vice head of state of the Infinite Empire. Before the Infinite Empire gains control of more star systems, the Infinite Empire will have a maximum of 5 vice heads of state. Furthermore, I appoint." Gu Qijue then recited a long string of names. These names included Dao Taihuang, Gu Yangs, Bei Qingshan, Gu Yinling, and Victoria. Among others, all god-rank combatants were appointed by him as commanders of the Infinite Empire. All demigods were appointed by him as generals of the Infinite Empire. Of course, based on everyone's differing strengths and their contributions to the establishment of the Infinite Empire. Commanders were divided into 1-star to 5-star commanders, and generals were also divided into 1-star to 5-star generals. The vice heads of state of the Infinite Empire would be preferentially selected from among the 5-star commanders. Of course, currently, even Dao Taihuang, Gu Yangs, and even Gu Yinling were not 5-star commanders. The matter of being promoted from a 5-star commander to an imperial vice head of state was not something anyone needed to consider much yet. When Gu Qijue led the Emperor Star Alliance to war with Shenhuang continent, he had spoken of establishing the Divine Wilderness Empire. At that time, many people in the Emperor Star Alliance were skeptical. As for the cultivators of Shenhuang continent, they even thought Gu Qijue was just daydreaming. Now, Gu Qijue used ironclad reality to tell everyone what the Divine Wilderness Empire was. He was establishing the Infinite Empire, and he was the supreme ruler of the entire desolate star system. The establishment of the Infinite Empire greatly excited the forces of Emperor Star and Shenhuang continent, and also furthered their integration. Emperor Star and Shenhuang continent, which had previously been plagued by internal strife, no longer experienced large-scale internal wars. Their goals were no longer the small plot of land before them, but the sea of stars. After the establishment of the Infinite Empire, many detailed rules needed to be discussed. However, Gu Qijue did not participate in this, but went to do more important things. These issues were completed by Dai Qi, Jai Tianyu, and Xiling, the three imperial vice heads of state, along with numerous god-rank commanders of the Infinite Empire. The place Gu Qijue went to this time was the border of the Tianyuan star cluster civilization. He brought a space fleet with him this time. However, apart from him, all the other starships were operated by mechanical lifeforms, not cellular lifeforms. Tian Li and Tian Hao maintained remote contact with Gu Qijue this time, but neither of them went. Near the Tianyuan star cluster civilization, there might be a trap waiting for them. Gu Qijue was traveling aboard the Emperor flagship, followed by 10 super god-rank starships. This was the Infinite Empire's entire current foundation. Although the Infinite Empire possessed immense potential, their development time was simply too short. As Gu Qijue's fleet sailed majestically through the universe, many space pirates either probed them or simply steered clear. F-rank cosmic-level starships possessed the strength to kill F-rank universe-level experts. Ordinary space pirates would only target merchant ships, not armed starships. Gu Qijue arrived at the border of the Tianyuan star cluster civilization very smoothly. This place was littered with a large number of shattered starship wrecks. All these starship wrecks had become space junk. Many refugees from the Tianyuan star cluster civilization were on ground bases or various spacecraft, eagerly looking up at the sky. Not only did Gu Qijue want the talents of the Tianyuan star cluster civilization, but star cluster-level civilizations like the Vermilion Bird Empire and the Qianqi Empire also wanted them. Therefore, the fleets of these star cluster-level civilizations were also present here. 216, inside the planet, 2 big fish were caught. Most fleets arriving at the edge of the Tianyuan star cluster civilization were not there to receive refugees. Aside from places like the desolate star system, most star systems contained numerous planetary civilizations or stellar civilizations formed by intelligent life. The desolate star system was relatively special. Even after introducing a high-end talent of Tian Li's caliber, only 2 more civilizations were discovered. Gu Qijue temporarily had no time to deal with the cat spirit star civilization and the forest star civilization. Those 2 civilizations happened to be a planetary civilization and a stellar civilization, respectively, so he didn't need to worry about them. After Gu Qijue's fleet arrived, a large number of civilian aircraft approached his location. Gu Qijue also left the Emperor flagship and entered space. Soon, many figures emerged from these aircraft. Upon seeing Gu Qijue, they all spoke with extreme humility. "Respected sir, can your fleet accept ordinary refugees? We can do everything we can for your planet, as long as you provide us with some food and a habitat in the beginning." It seemed the refugees had been rejected too many times. So when they spoke to Gu Qijue about this, they didn't hold much hope. The greater the hope,